Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 6 of the Karen Reed trial. Those of you who may have missed day 5, first and foremost, shame on you. Not your fault. I get it. Things happen. Things come up. That's why I'm here, to keep you up to date as to exactly what's been going on. Yesterday afternoon was kind of like what we call voir dire. This was sort of a mini hearing where the court was trying to weigh whether or not there were too many issues with respect to ARCA's interpersonal relation with the defense, or as the state would have the court believe, that there was under the table cahoots working between ARCA and defense, and that the court should keep out ARCA's testimony from these. ARCA are the accident recreation experts who are expected to testify that John O'Keefe's injuries were not sustained in a car accident. They didn't come in a car accident at all, and that the entire theory of the state's case is bunk. That's what the defense wants to put forward. We heard yesterday afternoon from Daniel Wolf, most of the afternoon, who was being drilled by Hank Brennan in a very aggressive tone by Mr. Brennan. I'm not going to kid you. And then he was recalibrated by Mr. Alessi, who came in there trying to show that they really hadn't done anything under the table. In fact, they were working for the state most of the time. None of that is really relevant to today. These are decisions that the judge is going to make weeks from, which can make days from now, weeks from now, as to whether or not during the defense's case in chief, they'll be allowed to bring ARCA in. A lot of people feel that if they can bring in an ARCA testimony, state's case is done. And Karen Reed stands very, very little chance of being convicted. What we are dealing with today, and we're probably not going to hear about Judge Beverly Cannoni's decision on ARCA for some time, although who knows with her. Could come today. We really don't know. ARCA said that they can have the papers ready they can have their final report ready by May 7th, if in fact the court is willing to accept it, their discovery mid-trial here. What we care about today is testimony of Ian Whiffen. Ian Whiffen is a forensic digital analyst who came in and testified yesterday morning. We closed out the morning with the beginning of his cross, and we're expecting his cross to go on, I would expect at least. When I say we, I'm referring to the royal we, not that I'm really any sort of royalty, but I still am referring to myself in the traditional royal we. When I say we are anticipating that his cross will probably spend some time on it, as well as his redirect. And then we'll see if we get to any other witnesses today, because he spent a great deal of time on direct yesterday. And his first point was that he had a chance to look at Jen McCabe's cell phone, and all this talk you hear in the news and the media about how she did this search for Haas Long to die in cold, and that she did that at 2:29 in the morning, hours before the body of John O'Keefe was discovered, which leads a lot of people to conclude that Jen McCabe knew that John O'Keefe was out there in the cold, and perhaps was part of a cabal of people who were responsible for leaving him out there in the cold. Certainly that's what the defense wants us to believe, at least just to have strongly considered enough that we have reasonable doubt. So with respect to that Google search, Ian Whiffen testified that the way Safari works on the iPhone,
you are unmuted,
was a reflection of the fact that it would show whatever the last search was and what time you opened the tab. And they ran this over and over again. And since the last search she ran was for how long it takes time to cold, that she did that at 6 o'clock in the morning. And yet it shows that's just the bizarro, weirdo way that Safari interacted with the iPhone operating system that was on her phone. And you say, test it, and every time you can run. If she ran through another, then no matter what, no matter what happened,
Justice of the Norfolk Superior Court.
That's what it was going to be.
Draw near, give your attendance, you shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This court is now open.
I'll mute her while she asks her stupid, annoying questions. So, and his point was that no matter what, if she searched for 6 different things on that same tab, and if she had stopped after any one of them, it would show that that was what was happening at 2:29 in the morning. She opened that tab at 2:29 in the morning, looked up some basketball website or something of that nature. This is Cannoni and asking the jury if they've violated her orders and basically conducted their own research on the trial, etc. We don't need to hear her yammering like that about that today. They're all going to nod their head no. They're all going to shake their head no. So what his point was, she opens up 2:29 in the morning, looks at basketball, and then she goes to a different site later on. I think she goes like It's Raining Men or something like that she's playing there. And if she had stopped after that, it would say that she played It's Raining Men at 2:29 in the morning. And then when she searched up something else later on about the Canton government website on the same browser, and if she closed it out then, it would say she looked up the Canton thing at 2:29 in the morning. So, in fact, when she was looking it up at 6:20 in the morning, how long to die in the cold, that's why it's showing 2:29 in the morning. I will say this. It's hard for me to believe that they intentionally murdered John O'Keefe. I struggle with accepting that that's really what happened. All of a sudden, he gets his axe and they're like, oh, okay, let's kill him. This is not like a movie, like when they're living there in real life. That's not what's happening. He also testified 3 ways.
So you're still in.
This is Ian Whiffen. 3 ways that he could tell that
Right,
John
Mr.
definitely
Leslie,
died
all
in the
set.
cold and never went inside from forensic data, including Waze, the health of the phone battery steadily getting colder, and Doppler effect,
Yes.
showing that his phone wasn't reopened and it was in pocket condition from 12:40 in the morning when he left the car until he was found at 5:40 the next morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. Now he's being crossed by a lessee. And this should be an extensive cross because he did some damage. He did some damage to the defense. He at least strengthened the case
Your Honor,
of the
if I
state.
may address the court.
If not, did some
Mr.
damage.
Brennan and I have agreed, as we did yesterday,
Is it a
to
critical
stipulate
point?
into evidence portions of Mr. Whiffin's March 2025 report. So if I could have it marked. Thank you.
Exhibit 43. Thank you.
Thank you.
Should I cross? Make sure you're checking the Chiron
Yeah, Your
going
Honor.
across the bottom of the
Thank you.
screen.
Morning, Mr. Whiffin.
Good morning.
That's
and
not
welcome
it.
back.
Thank you.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Whiffin, I just handed you, which is in evidence as Exhibit 43. And this is a portion of your March 2025 report. If you could just take a moment to look at it, and when you've had a fair opportunity to do that, I'd ask you to turn to page 28.
Okay.
And just, if you could, sir, just pick up your head and let me know when you're ready to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
It's so weird being on time. Is it better? What do you think? What do you guys think? Is it better like this or like this? So I think I make them bigger this way. It's better like this, like this. I don't like that.
Thank you.
You ready, Mr. Whiffen?
I am.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do is to, with your honor's permission, is to publish pages 28, 29, and 30 and start with page 28.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Wolf? And if you could enlarge the text down below as much as you can so the jury can see it.
But one last thing I should point out is near the end of his direct testimony, he presented a timeline breaking down exactly what the last hours of John O'Keefe's life were and where he was and how his life basically ended in order to help give a clearer picture to the jury. This is the first thing that Alessi was attacking yesterday. So he's probably, because that's the most, it draws the strongest picture for the jury. And that's probably what I would imagine he's going to want to attack, unless he's going to want to attack some more.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. So, Mr. Whiffen, this summary section of your report is a summary of the location section that you wrote in your March 2025 report, correct?
That's correct.
And it states the location data on this device contains a vast number of records while traveling between 12/19/33 and 12/24/38. These records all have a high horizontal accuracy value as well as bearing and speed information which conforms to the streets being traveled. Next paragraph. The device arrived outside 34 Fairview at 12/24/38 where it remained static for about 30 seconds. Do you see that, sir?
I do, yes.
And did I read that correctly?
You did.
Did I read that correctly?
Sorry, yes, you did.
Yeah, so at the end of it says, show the device moving west from the roadside towards the house. That's what you wrote, correct?
Correct.
Sounds like it's not on the road.
I would like you to
It's kind of across
switch
the lawn.
back to the timeline of Mr. Whiffen that we had published yesterday in Deck 79. Mr. Whiffen, if you could please, we just read that portion of your report that says at 25:30 the device bearing shifts to a westerly direction as location records also show the device moving west from the roadside towards the house. Did you put that in your timeline?
I did not.
Because westerly
That's
sounds like
information,
he's not on the
isn't it?
street anymore.
I believe with the declining accuracy, the value that those records provided was more limited.
Oh, you're going to spend a lot of time talking about
It was
this.
important enough for you to write it in your report, but you didn't put it in the timeline, correct?
Correct.
Now, if you could continue on your report, page 29, Mr. Wolk, if we could put, and we're going to be flipping back and forth between the timeline in your report.
Okay.
If we could go to page 29, enlarge it, the text, so the jury is able to read it along with us. We're going to start from the top. So the next says, from the combination of device location and bearing, it does appear that the device started to move towards the house.
Off the
However,
street,
since
across
the
the
bearing
lawn.
information appears to be based on the location records rather than the direction the device is facing, it is difficult to say with any degree of certainty if the device actually moved. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
So the first part is again a statement that the device has started to move toward the house. Now, if we could go to the next paragraph. This location data is immediately followed by 12 minutes of low accuracy records, which offer no reliable location information. So I just want to make sure I've got the time period here right. The 12 minutes is from 12:25, correct?
Yes.
And
That's
so
correct.
1225 plus 12 is 1237. So the range we're talking about here is from 1225 through 1237, correct?
Correct.
Then, if we could go to, Mr. Wolf, please, back to the timeline, slide 82. So I want to discuss with you the very top entry, Health 123156, where you have the entry start of health event, 36 steps, 25 meters. And yesterday we agreed 25 meters is approximately 84 feet, correct?
Correct.
And that is what you have in the timeline. Let's understand what that means. At that time period, 12/31/56, do you recall writing in a March 2025 report that the device began moving for a period of 20 seconds?
Related to the location data, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
So what distance? What direction? Was it going west? Was it going north? South? You're saying you don't trust it's going west? It wasn't going west towards the house.
Now,
What
if we
direction?
could, Mr. Wolf, go back to page 29 of the report.
Going somewhere. What the hell does that even mean? What direction is
So
he going?
what I want to do is go back to that paragraph up at the top from the combination of the device. From the combination of device location and bearing, it does appear that the device started to move toward the house. However, since the bearing information appears based on the location records rather than the direction the device is facing, it is difficult to say with any degree of certainty if the device actually moved. So you're talking about difficulty saying with certainty, correct?
Correct.
But it is certainly possible that the device was at that location and was moving toward the house. That's possible, correct?
Based on location data, yes.
Now what I'd like to do, please, is to go stay on that report. And the third paragraph says, the reason for such low accuracy location data at this time is not known, as there are many possible reasons why the accuracy was be reduced. There's a little grammar issue there, but
Correct.
in fairness to you, sir, we do that when we write long reports. But I think that your intention here is, why the accuracy is reduced at
Was
this
reduced,
point,
yes.
correct?
Correct.
Thank you. This could include reasons such as the device entered a building covered area, the result of weather conditions, geography, poor connectivity, or interference, to name a few. So those are the reasons you gave, which could contribute to some low accuracy, correct?
Correct.
And interesting, the very first reason you gave
She went into a building.
is that the device could be entering a building or covered area. And that phraseology could include a house, correct?
Correct.
It could include a garage attached to the house, correct?
Correct.
And it could include the house at 34 Fairview, and it could include the garage attached to the house at 34 Fairview, because both of those are buildings or covered areas, correct?
Correct.
Then you go on in the next paragraph to say it is known that the device was not being used at this time, and is this time that include that 12:37, 12-minute range, 12:25 to 12:37?
Yes, it was not being used for location purposes.
So that's another reason why, right, the accuracy could be a little bit on the lower side.
Correct.
Now, the next paragraph says, at 12:38:13, when the device begins recording higher, and that's relative to what it was recording before. It's not that it's high, but it's higher than what it was just moments before.
Correct.
The data centers on a location slightly closer to the house than the roadside. Although several records show the same center coordinate with differing accuracy radii. Some of these location records are shown in the map below in white. So let's go down and look at what you had in your report for the area in white. In the area in white that you're referring to, there are two white circles, the largest one there. This, in fact, was a depiction that you included in your report on page 29, correct?
Correct.
Interesting and notable, you did not include that depiction in your timeline that you discussed with the
And
jury.
it swamps the
yesterday,
house.
Did you?
I did not know.
Yeah, that's getting into
But
the house
it was
now.
important enough for you to put that depiction in your report, correct?
Mhm.
Correct.
And notably, the larger white circle covers a substantial amount of the house at 34 Fairview, correct?
Correct.
And if you went in, the reception might be bad
So,
also. It
given
explained
your
why the reception was so
testimony
bad.
on direct yesterday with Attorney Brennan, the phone of John O'Keefe, according to this depiction, could be anywhere within the largest white circle, correct?
Correct.
And this depiction was not offered by you or the Commonwealth in your presentation to the jury yesterday, correct?
Correct. Not in the PowerPoint.
Not anywhere.
Now, if we
heard
could
about it. We never saw that picture. We never saw that picture. Why were you hiding
go
that picture?
back, Mr. Wolk, to page 29 of your report, into the text. And if we can enlarge the text just a little bit, please, for the jury, Mr. Wolk. So the paragraph that begins with at 12:38:13, when the device begins recording higher accuracy information. Again, the data centers on a location slightly closer to the house than the roadside, although several records show the same center coordinate with differing accuracy radii. Some of these location records are shown on the map in white below. And I repeated that just to to connect this part of the text to that diagram with a big white circle. Have I done that correctly?
Yes, correct.
Thank you, sir. The next paragraph. Over the next few hours, the GPS coordinate and the associated accuracy radius jumps around numerous times between the house and the road. Did I read that correct?
Maybe he was
Correct.
dancing on the front lawn. Maybe he's like, I don't want to die here.
And
Let me die over there,
therefore-
20 feet away.
Over the next few hours, according to your report, the phone of John O'Keefe could be in the house, correct?
Based on the low accuracy information, yes.
Oh,
The answer is yes.
Yes.
oh,
The next paragraph.
oh no, oh no.
Well, we'll stop there for a moment, and
It's
I
like-
would
it's
like
not
to
the most
Mr. Wolf,
accurate
go
information, but it
back,
could be.
Go down, scroll, please, to that diagram that's right below that text again.
Right there, you have reasonable doubt.
Yesterday, you discussed Waze,
That doesn't mean
the
you shouldn't
Waze
kill him.
application with
Just means
Ms. Attorney
You can't
Grant,
prove that.
correct?
Killed him.
Correct.
Beyond
And
reasonable
you
doubt.
stated that Waze location data is more accurate than the data that comes from the Apple apps like health data and location, correct?
Incorrect. No.
I'm sorry, is Waze location data, in your view, accurate location data?
There isn't really a thing such as Waze location data.
I'm sorry,
Waze,
I'm having trouble hearing.
Waze location data doesn't really exist. Waze is requesting location data from location services, and location services would respond with high accuracy information.
Okay, I appreciate that correction. So when someone is using a Waze application, is the information they get through that Waze app accurate?
It tries to be accurate, yes.
That's just not answering
And
the
as a
question.
general matter, is the Waze
Tries to be or
application
is.
more accurate than the Apple information regarding
That's a
location?
good question.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing because it's coming essentially from the same source, correct?
Yes, Apple provides that information to Waze.
Right. So you had testified
Okay.
yesterday that at a certain point, the Waze application ceased functioning, correct?
Correct.
But just because it ceased functioning, the Waze, the Apple applications were still taking effect, and that's why you could make this depiction on this item that is on the screen now, correct?
Correct.
If we could, Mr. Wolk, go to page 30. What I'd like to highlight, please, is the text. So if we can enlarge it up at the top. So you then state, while location data from this data source, cache SQLite, is usually able to identify the location of the device with a high degree of accuracy and reliability, these records are so close that making a distinction between the device's actual location on the front garden is impossible, correct?
Correct.
Your words, impossible.
Correct.
Impossible. We don't know.
Did you provide any of the information in that paragraph in your timeline or to the jury in your direct testimony yesterday?
Not in the PowerPoint, no.
No. It's buried in a
Next
report that I
paragraph.
figure they'll never read.
If the location records are limited to just the records between 0025, which is 12:25, and 6 a.m. and with an accuracy radius of 10 meters or less, there are 46 records, all of which fall within the red circle shown below. Go ahead, Mr. Wolk, if you could scroll down. And that is the only depiction there that you included in your timeline yesterday, correct?
Correct.
So you took one of two depictions in your summary of the location, this one, in terms of your timeline presentation, correct?
Correct.
Now, in terms of
And
the timeline, And Mr. Woke, if we could go back to the previous with the other.
And this is something I didn't talk about yesterday. I want to just touch on briefly for a moment here. This is very important that I want to share with you. Okay. And that is, he said that he had a second map which had all these different dots outside. And he said that he used exclusively dots that showed up which were verifiably within 10 meters of his location. And he took the center of each of those dots and made it center of each of those verifiable points and came up with those 46 dots. All those dots were outside. But he just admitted that when he's inside, it's less likely to get a fix on him, which means that, and we don't know what time those dots were created. We just know they were created during the 5 hours. For all we know, there was like multiple, there was things that show him inside the house that were less verifiable during the critical first 45 minutes after he gets out of the car. And he didn't include them because Waze or the iPhone couldn't zero in within 10 meters of the house where he was because it's being blocked by the house. So none of those are showing in that circle. So the only things we see in that circle are things that you get within 10 meters. When he's inside the house, you're less likely to get something when he's a showing of being within 10 meters because it's blocked by the house. And those are the ones he's leaving out of the report. So all you see is 46 dots, and all those 46 dots could have come, in theory, between 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the morning. There's no timestamp as to what time those dots came up there. So during the first 2 hours after she leaves, we have no idea where he was at all in relation to those dots, the house, or anything, because he only showed stuff that was highly accurate, which is very misleading because it seems as if, oh, okay, that's where he was the entire 5 hours. No, that's the only thing that he found accuracy for during those 5 hours. So it is cherry picking evidence. He really was cherry picking evidence, and I'm hopeful that Alessi goes through that in strong detail, because I think it destroys much of what he said yesterday.
Depiction. It's on page 29. If we could enlarge that depiction, please. So you testified that the flagpole and the fire hydrant are more down toward the small black circle. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And yesterday, you rendered an opinion that you believed that the phone was mostly in the location by the flagpole and the fire hydrant, correct?
Objection.
I'm going to see counsel at sidebar for a minute, please.
You should be able to catch up now, mostly, in that little interlude I gave you.
So if we can enlarge that depiction.
Check out Lizzie's back.
So yesterday, Mr. Whiffin, you focused
I'll try to look at it. No,
your
thanks.
testimony and your opinions on the smaller black circle, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't discuss at all or disclose at all this depiction, and therefore didn't discuss or disclose at all the larger white circle, correct?
Not when discussing my overall opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
So the answer is
No.
Dark
right.
Moon.
So
Stop it.
the fair way to interpret, and this is what you put in your report, this is your depiction, is that, and based upon what you said yesterday,
Those
the
of you
phone
who may admit,
could be at the very edge of the top of the circle, correct?
Correct.
And the phone could also be at any point, so you can, in theory, put a phone anywhere around the very edges of that entire circle, correct?
There's caveats to that, but yes.
Well, I'm just asking
Yes.
you that according to your testimony yesterday in this depiction, the phone could be anywhere in that location
Yes.
within the
What is
area
that?
of that white circle.
Correct.
I'll send you a link. You could pop in here. I'll send you a link if you think I'm doing a bad job. I want to have. I'm trying to give balance. I'm saying both sides of it. Unbelievable.
I would like to now
That's
go
harsh.
back to
I'll send you a link.
the timeline, Mr. Wolf, where we had left off, which is slide 82. And at the very top entry, you have health, time 31:56. And then the description, start of health event, 36 steps, 25 meters. And we agreed about 84 feet. And this is where the device began moving toward the house for a period of 20 seconds. Is that correct?
It's the time that 36 steps started to be recorded. I've got no idea of the direction of travel.
I want to focus on the time, 12:31:56. Are you aware that a firm called Aperture, on behalf of the Commonwealth, has submitted a report that states that there was a trigger event at 12:31:56 that they refer to as the supposed collision? Are you aware of that?
Objection.
Sustained.
I recall seeing a
So you
report.
don't,
Sorry.
You don't have to answer
Sorry,
that. Mr.
apologies.
Wilson, That's okay.
Mr. Whiffin, are you familiar with a firm called Aperture?
I'm vaguely aware of them. I've heard of them once.
Are you familiar with a person by the name of Dr. Judson Welcher?
I'm not, no.
But you're familiar with the firm Aperture.
I am.
And do you know that the Aperture firm is working on this case?
That's the only reason I'm aware of this company.
Right. And do you know that the Aperture firm has used your data in your report? Do you know that?
I believe I saw something about that.
You believe you saw something, or do you know that they've used your data for a report in this matter?
I recall seeing a report. I don't recall whether it was my data that was being referenced.
Do you recall seeing a report from Aperture?
I do.
So you reviewed a report from Aperture.
Several months ago, yes.
And did you read the whole report?
It was a PowerPoint presentation, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, I
It-
reviewed it.
And you recall reading that entire PowerPoint presentation?
I don't recall what it said, but I remember reading through it.
Fair enough. Do you remember, as you sit here today, reading about a trigger of a number 1162-2? Do you recall reading that?
I recall seeing reference to a trigger event.
What did you understand the Aperture firm that's retained by the Commonwealth, what do you understand they meant by trigger 1162-2?
Objection.
Sustained.
Do you recall the specific slide that discussed a trigger?
Objection.
Do you recall that, Mr. Whiffen?
Very vaguely.
Would it help your recollection if I showed you a slide from that report that you said you reviewed to refresh your recollection?
Objection.
All right, so why don't I see counsel at sidebar? Bring that with you, Mr. Leslie, please.
But it's piqued our interest. We need to know. Let's see if we can catch up. Catch up time. Catch up time. Am I wrong? Almost. We are live. But I think that's an important point that I really hope he gets to. I think he will. He seems like he's a very competent attorney. But that all those dots that he made there, he said it when he was giving his testimony that he only relied on dots that were very close and that had a very small radius. When they were describing the Waze information yesterday, he was saying sometimes there's bigger circles, sometimes there's smaller circles. Smaller circles is when Waze geolocation is more confident that they can narrow you down within as close as 5 meters of your location. When they're less confident, because reception isn't as good, so they'll have a bigger circle saying you're somewhere in there. You're going to have less confidence when he's inside. So if he spent an hour inside, none of those points would show. And he's only showing the points that have great confidence. If they're in the basement, for example, when I'm in the basement of my house, I struggle for reception. I can't believe that Waze knows exactly where I am in that basement to get it down within 25 meters. So he spent the entire time in the basement if that's where they're having their party, or even like, on the first floor when there's 2 floors above them. It's very possible that there was relatively poor reception and multiple data points which implied that he was in the center, that he was somewhere centered there, but it's somewhere in the center of a big circle because they don't know in the house. They don't know in the house where he is because it's hard to get reception there. And he purposefully said that I'm only giving you the ones where I have great accuracy on his location. And he doesn't even timestamp what time those accuracy points are. So for all we know, the first accuracy point he shows up there is literally 2 hours after he got dropped off. There's no way to know without the timestamps on those red dots that are outdoors. We know he was outdoors for a while, so that's nice that we have data points then. Just because we can't fix his location when he's in the house, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean he's not in the house, or it's not very likely he's in the house. And again, I'm not saying that he was in the house. I'm simply saying these are reasons to question the findings here as to whether or not we have reasonable doubt that we're positive that this came out, that we're being shown everything we need to be shown. So, yeah, that's the, this is a long sidebar. This is a long sidebar. It could be he's referencing a report that she's not willing to accept. I don't know. I was a little disappointed. I mean, he sort of touched a little bit as far as moving toward the house, but I would have specified that so he wasn't on the street. If he sort of implied that he was walking towards the house westerly, assuming that map, when you say westerly, is accurately showing north, south, east, west. Sometimes they'll show you a map, certainly I know when you're using a Waze map, where it's like, north is to the east and south is to the west, and it's very confusing. But assuming that map is right side up, in that case, the house, 34 Fairview, is toward the west of the street that they drove down to arrive at the house. And if you walk westerly rather than walking northerly, so in that case, if he's walking northerly, you can see him walking up. You can envision him walking up and still being in the street, easy to be hit by a car. So walking westerly across the lawn, that's a hard thing to do, to hit someone on the lawn. Although it depends on whether it's a curb, I guess.
Mayor, Your Honor.
You can approach.
Thank you.
I guess if he's on a lawn and he gets hit when he's on the lawn, that's more of that would be some level of evidence of intent, right?
This to Mr. Brennan.
If you drove on the lawn,
I'm handing you this document.
Thank you.
May I stand by the witness? Sure. Tell me when you've had a fair opportunity to take a look at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's a good point, Lemon Zinger.
Mr. Whiffen, does that refresh
Probably
your
too.
recollection with regard to an aperture report that discusses a trigger of 1162.2?
It does, thank you.
Pardon me?
It does, thank you.
And how does it refresh your recollection?
I remember seeing that several months ago.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. There's a blower on here that I'm having trouble hearing Mr. Whiffen. If you, sir, could bring the mic, it's not your fault. If you could bring it and speak a little louder, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I recall seeing that as part of the report that I read 2 months ago.
And you recall the time of 12:31:38 now, correct?
Correct.
Let's go back to your timeline. '82. So you just spoke about a trigger 1162.2 associated with a time of 12:31:38, and we are now at the timeline of 12:31:56, correct? Objection.
Sustained.
We are now going back to the timeline, deck 82, and you see up at the top where it says health 31:56. You see that, sir?
I do.
And then it says start of health event, 36 steps, 25 meters, which we have said is 84 feet or so. And this is when the device begins moving, correct?
Correct.
And that is after the trigger of 1162.2, correct? Objection.
Sustained.
Let's go to the next entry on the timeline, which is 12:32:03. You see that? That's Doppler.
I do.
And then you state pocket state cleared. Is the phone at that time in a pocket?
It's impossible for me to say. I can say that the camera was blocked, but I don't know what was blocking it.
You're saying at this point the camera is blocked?
It had been blocked, and at that point, it became unblocked.
So at this point, it became unblocked from a previous block status, correct?
Yes.
Does there have to be some human manipulation of the phone at 12:32:03 for that to happen?
Technically not. There are scenarios that wouldn't require it.
Is it more likely than not that there had to have been some human contact in action for this pocket state clearing event to occur?
Yes.
12:32:04 is the next. It's a type unlock. Device unlock with Face ID. You see that, sir?
I do.
Is there some human action that has to occur for the device to unlock with Face ID?
Typically, you must be paying attention to the phone.
I'm sorry, sir.
You must be paying attention to the phone, assuming that that setting's enabled.
So someone had to be looking at the phone.
Yes.
At 12:32:05, application focus. What does that mean?
That the messages application was at the foreground of the device being used.
Next entry, 12:32:06. We discussed this. It says read message, pull behind me. And that is associated with a Jen McCabe. It's the Jen McCabe message of 31:47, correct?
Correct.
And does a human have to be reading that for that entry to be made?
The message needs to be on screen. If the conversation with Jen McCabe was already on screen when the device was unlocked, then that message would automatically be considered read.
Next entry, app lock, 12:32:09, end application focuses messages, and then it says device locked with lock button for the last time. That requires human interaction with the phone, correct?
Correct.
And it actually requires somebody to take the cell phone and press the side button to do that, correct?
It does, yes.
So there has to be some degree of coordination for that to occur, for a human to be able to have something that hits that button, correct?
Certainly, yes.
Do you understand what the term fine motor skill means? Do you
Yes.
understand that? And would that person have to be using fine motor skills to do that?
Yes.
Next entry, 12/32/16. End of health event, 36 steps, 25 meters, again, 84 feet. That is in your timeline because that's when you believe the end of the health event, the end of the 36 steps occurred, correct?
That is the time that the device data shows the end of the health event, yes.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you need the light, Mr. Lessie?
Yeah, it would be helpful. Thank you,
Could
Your
we have
Honor.
the lights, please, Dave?
Do you recall writing in your March 2025 report the following? The final health activity of note on John's phone can be seen to have occurred between 12/31/56 and 12/32/16, during which 36 steps were recorded, covering a distance of 25.4 meters, again, that 84 feet, according to healthdbsecure.db. Do you recall writing that?
I do.
And you used in your report 36 steps were recorded covering a distance of 25.4 meters or 84 feet, correct?
Correct.
Do you know a trooper named Nicholas Garino?
I'm aware of him, yes.
Are you a little more than aware of him? You've worked with him on this case, haven't you?
He sent me some of the files related to it, but further than that, I've got no relationship with him.
But isn't someone sending you files on a case you're working on, working with the person? Isn't that a fair conclusion?
It could be.
Do you recall reading any reports of Nicholas Garino?
I don't recall reading a report by Nick.
Does that mean you didn't read it or you just don't recall reading it?
I honestly can't remember if I did or not. I remember some of the reports that I read for this case. I don't recall if one was by Nick.
Would it refresh your recollection if I showed you a portion of his report to determine whether you would have read it?
Please.
Thank you. Moment, Your Honor, please.
Sure.
On cross-examination, it's not uncommon for even honest people to be hesitant before locking down an opinion because they're always you're wary that you're being trapped or set up. So you always want to this continual equivocation. That's not an uncommon thing at all, to be fair.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Show Mr. Brennan.
Yes. I just want to make sure I got the entire report.
That's the thought.
Mr. Whiffen?
Thank you.
And may I stand by the witness, Your Honor? Thank you. I am providing you with a document, and I would ask if that refreshes your recollection as to whether you've read a report of Mr. Green.
A report or this report?
This report. Thank you, Your Honor.
John Webb says Brennan reminds me of Gilbert Gottfried after the afternoon session yesterday. He was very aggressive. He was very aggressive.
I don't recall ever seeing this report.
Have you ever had any conversations with Trooper Nicholas Garino?
Very briefly.
But you had, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Did Trooper Garino tell you that he measured the distance from the flagpole to the front door and it was 72 feet? Did he ever tell you that?
Sustained.
Did you ever have a conversation with Trooper Nick Garino about the distance from the flagpole to the front door of 34 Fairview?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Shaking your head, no,
So-
maybe.
Is it maybe then you had a conversation with him in which he stated to you that that distance is 72 feet?
It's maybe.
So if we go back to
That's uncomfortable.
what we were
That exact distance.
discussing earlier about the steps and the distance covered. And this is in your report of March 2025, where we've talked about this, and it's the final health activity of note on John's phone can be seen to have occurred between 12:31:56 and 12:32:16.
Is this the correct slide?
No, it's
So
not.
let's take
Yeah,
it down.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let me start that over. The final health activity of note on John's phone could be seen to have occurred between 12:31:56 and 12:32:16, during which 36 steps were recorded, covering a distance of 5.4 meters.
It's in
or 84
20
feet.
seconds.
84 feet is greater than 72 feet, correct?
Correct.
So if the distance from the flagpole to the front of the house is 72 feet, and your report notes 36 steps covering a distance of 84 feet, that would put those steps within the house, correct?
It would.
Let's continue on with the timeline.
So the only reason to think he was in the house is because
Deck 83.
the battery keeps cooling.
We now have
Am I missing something?
Doppler 1233:14, and then Doppler pocket state. Do you recall in your report adding a word to this that your report said pocket state detected? Do you recall writing that?
More than likely, yes.
Yes. But the detected word is not on that slide, is it?
It's not, no.
What does pocket state detected mean?
There was an active check by the Doppler function, and it detected that it was in a pocket state.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? Yes. To switch? Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Do you need this slide up there, Mr. Alessi?
I was just
Respectfully,
going to check that. I think the answer is
Caliela.
going to be no, Your Honor.
respectfully, if you trust their search findings, the investigative findings, during the 2 hours beforehand, his battery is continually between 25 and 30 degrees centigrade. And when he got out of the car, it was at the similar, like 24, 25 degrees centigrade.
I would now like to change gears a
So
bit.
that's how his
and
battery
go
was running
to
the whole night.
Temperature with an iPhone. You recall that discussion in your direct testimony?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Wolk, if we could please have the slide deck, but a different page,
Could be.
slide 60.
It wasn't heating up when he was in Waterfall.
And just
from
tee it up, but
McCarthy's.
please don't put it on the screen yet.
Oh, dang.
iPhones don't record
charger, I
ambient
guess.
or the environmental temperature where the phone may be at any given time, correct?
Correct.
But the iPhones, including the iPhone of John O'Keefe, log the temperature of the battery inside of it, correct?
Here we go. Here we go.
And as a result of that function, examiners and folks like you can use the battery temperature of an iPhone to identify increases or decreases in temperature within the environment that the iPhone is physically located in. True?
I believe so, yes.
And that's right out of your report, right? Your March 2025 report makes that very statement, correct?
Yes.
The battery temperature of an iPhone generally matches the pattern of the rise and the fall of the thermometer temperature, correct?
From my testing, yes.
And when an iPhone is in a lock state with little activity occurring on the device, the battery temperature is heavily affected by the ambient temperature in the environment, again, matching the pattern of the rise and the fall of the thermometer temperature, right?
Correct.
And what I just read is right out of your March 2025 report, correct?
It sounds like it is, yes.
And you actually established this in various temperature testing and test scenarios in your March 2025 report, correct?
Correct.
Let's discuss those two tests. You had an appendix to your report that discussed two test scenarios with regard to temperature, correct?
Correct.
Can
And
I
that
just
was
ask, I'm sorry, Mr. Whiffen, do you have your report with you, sir?
I don't have a copy in front of me.
I'd be happy to provide him with a copy of his report so we can have him follow along.
I think that's great. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Would that be helpful, Mr. Whiffen?
Very, thank you.
Yeah, approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
Yeah, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you.
There you go. And Mr. Whiffen, feel free at any time to reference that report.
Thank you.
And if you could, turn to page 77.
Okay.
So are you ready, sir?
I am, yes.
Thank you. So let's look at test scenario 1. Test scenario 1, you took an iPhone. If I'm remembering correctly, same model as John O'Keefe's?
I believe John O'Keefe's was iPhone 11. I used an iPhone 10.
But sufficiently
similar.
similar for purposes of this experiment? right?
Correct.
Or this test?
Same iOS version.
Yes. So it's the same iOS version, the software inside the phone, just a different model.
Yes,
And it's the software that's important for this test, correct?
I believe so.
So you state that you placed the iPhone inside a freezer, correct?
Correct.
And now if we could, Mr. Woke, if we can put that, do we have that in would be page 77?
My point
And if we
is,
could enlarge
it was
that
running
chart,
between
please.
25 and 30 degrees Celsius all night for hours beforehand, not just in the car ride.
Enlarge it just a little bit
So that
more.
does seem to establish a baseline
concerned
as
with
to
the text
how
at
that
this
phone was
point.
running that night.
So we can just get the chart as large as possible. Thank you.
Now, perhaps it was charging on some portable charger the entire night. That's possible, and he pulled it the
Thank you.
charger out when he got
So
out of the car.
what I'd like to do is focus on January.
Now you're starting to create
29th.
scenarios to justify what seems likely.
Excuse me. This is your experiment. When did you do test scenario 1, approximately the date?
This is a good question. It was sometime probably in December last year.
I'm sorry.
In December last year, I believe.
December 2024.
Correct.
So what you did here was you took the phone, you put it inside a freezer. What was the temperature of the freezer?
I actually don't know.
What?
But it was a freezer.
You don't
It
know?
was freezing. Yes.
It is sort of your just regular freezer that
Yeah,
everybody
a
has.
regular chest
Nothing
freezer.
special about
No.
it.
Okay, that's ridiculous. You have to know what temperature the freezer is. That doesn't make any sense. That's bothersome to me because I know I got 2 freezers right here in this location, and one of them is a lot colder than the other one. Like it's not even like one of them. I put something in there. It'll take like 3 hours if I put a bottle of soda in there to chill it off. One of them one of them will be a rock in an hour and a half. The other I can leave it in there for 3.5 hours and it'll be like slush. You can't tell me you don't know the temperature of the freezer. That does placed in freezer. Come on, that's not very scientific-y.
Let's look at some of the data that you have from this.
Maybe you have to
Let's
know how
start
cold it was that
at
night and match those temperatures. That's how you do
the-
this experiment.
17
That's how you start doing
time
it.
frame where it's placed in the freezer and we're going to go with Fahrenheit if that's okay with you.
Of course, yes.
Thank you. 73.4 degrees. Correct?
Correct.
And then if you go all the way down to the 1725, which would be 15 minutes, correct?
Correct.
Can you state what the drop in temperature is of the battery temperature in just 15 minutes in a freezer?
Approximately 50 degrees Fahrenheit.
So it drops 50 degrees Fahrenheit in just 15 minutes.
Correct.
And is it fair to say that if you do the math, that's about a little over 3.5 degrees per minute? And if Your Honor, if he wants to use a calculator, or just accept my estimate, whatever Your Honor thinks is appropriate.
However, you can answer the question, Mr.
I'm happy to accept your answer. That's fine.
Let me just make
I just can pull this up because it's relevant here and now. So I just want to give this to you. I looked up Canton, Massachusetts weather. So we're dealing with Saturday morning at 12 a.m. It was somewhere between 25 and 28 degrees at that time. So this is according to timeanddate.com, somewhere between 25 and 28. So that's how cold it was then.
Sure. I have a moment, Your Honor.
And that's what he should be setting his freezer to. 27.5 degrees, 26 degrees.
3.33, would that sound fair, sir?
That sounds fair.
So it's about 3.3 degrees Fahrenheit per minute drop, correct?
Correct.
Now let's go to the next page of your report, page 78, where test scenario 2. And in test scenario 2, you took the same phone with the same software and you placed it outside at a temperature of 33.8 degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
Correct.
And we could enlarge that, please, Mr. Wolf.
Now, the difference is also it's near his heat of his body, presumably, or in his coat, his pocket. So it's not really the same temperature.
Scroll up. Well, just if you just leave it there, it's fine. So if we
It's not
take
as cold as 27 degrees.
the time that we start out with a control temperature, and then we've got a battery temperature at 9:02, and this is the battery temperature of the iPhone, correct?
Correct.
And we've got 66.2 degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
Correct.
So is it fair to call that a baseline for purposes of what this chart is?
The device had already been outside for 2 minutes at that point, but yes.
Okay, so we'll just refer to 66.2. And then if we go from 9:02 down to
13 minutes.
9:15, a period of 13 minutes, correct?
Correct.
So at 33.8 degrees and 13 minutes, what is the drop in temperature in degrees? What's the drop?
Sorry, between the 9:02 and the 9:15?
Right. So does it go from 66.2 to 35.6?
It does.
And sir, so I don't have to have you do a math on the fly. I've calculated it, that drop at 30.6. Does that sound about right?
That sounds correct, yes.
So you got a drop of 30.6 degrees
In 13
in
minutes.
just 13 minutes
That's
at an
very
outside
fast.
temperature of 33.8, correct?
It's very
Correct.
fast. That sounds very fast.
We're going to come back to this, but what I'd like to do is to compare these two test scenarios. The one we just saw at 33 degrees Fahrenheit, where it dropped 30.6 degrees in just 13 minutes, again at an outdoor temperature of 33.8, and then test scenario 1 in a freezer, where it dropped 61.2 degrees in just 15 minutes. Now let's go to the slide 60, which was in your slide presentation yesterday, of what you stated was the temperature change in the iPhone of John O'Keefe on the morning of January 29th. You with me, sir?
Yep.
Thank you. So if we start out at 12:13, we see a battery temperature of 82 degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
Correct.
Then it drops a little bit to 77, a little bit to 72. And what I want to focus on is keeping the starting point for my questions here at the 12:37 time period on the morning of January 29th. And that's 72 degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
Correct.
So if you take the time period from 12:37 to 12:53, that's a 15-minute interval, correct?
Correct.
the phone only drops 11 degrees Fahrenheit in 15 minutes, correct?
Correct.
If you then go to 12:37 and give it a little bit more time, down to 1:36 a.m.,
Show the map. I don't care about his
the
face.
temperature,
Show the graph.
and that's
What's the chart?
just about an hour, right?
Correct.
And the temperature drops from 72 to 50, only 22-degree drop in an hour, correct?
Correct.
Now, if you
To be fair, I think Alessi is actually using this guy's research against him effectively, but in a way that's actually misleading. In other words, yeah, this guy put it in a freezer and it lost 30 degrees in 13 minutes. But as I just pointed out, the phone's not in a freezer. It's in an outdoor environment of somewhere like around 28 degrees, but it's also pressed against his body, or it's in his coat. It's not exposed to the elements the same way a phone placed directly in a freezer is. It's not like it was the phone we assume was thrown in the snow or left on the ground there. So of course it's going to lose degrees faster. I mean, of course the heat of the battery will lose temperature, will retain its heat longer when it's being insulated by John's own body and or coat or pocket, wherever it is that he carried his phone. So it's not really exposed to the same level of cold as this guy's experiment in his freezer. His experiment in freezer is way more confusing than it is beneficial. It's a stupid experiment. But Alessi is, like a good lawyer should, going to use his own words to try and show that it's not consistent with what you tested.
compare this chart in the drop in temperature, for example, 12:37, 12:53, in 15 minutes, it's only dropping 11 degrees, to your experiments, where with the first scenario with the freezer, it dropped $50 degrees in a 15-minute period. Is it correct to say that there was a much more dramatic drop in temperature in your test scenario 1 than what actually occurred on John O'Keefe's phone for the time period we just covered in January 29th?
Yes.
And then with regard to even
Unless he may be
test
walking into a
scenario
trap
2,
here.
where the temperature is 33.8 degrees. That's the ambient, the outdoor temperature,
Correct.
right? At that temperature, just above freezing, you've got a...
Sorry, that's a bit below freezing.
I'm sorry?
It's below freezing.
What is freezing in Fahrenheit?
I don't know, but it's 0 degrees Celsius,
Right.
and it was -5 degrees Celsius at the time.
Right, but would you
Which trial
agree
was that?
and I want to be fair to you because I know you use Celsius more
Yes.
than Americans who use Fahrenheit. But would you agree that 2 degrees Fahrenheit is the freezing point in Fahrenheit?
I honestly wouldn't know.
Okay, fair enough.
He's British. He only knows
So
centigrade.
in any event,
0.
in your experiment at 33.8 degrees Fahrenheit, you're getting a drop in your experiment in 13 minutes of 30.6 degrees, right?
Correct.
Please make sure you like and subscribe. The reason
But
I
much
do
less
this.
drop in temperature on slide deck 60 of the actual iPhone of John O'Keefe on the morning of January 29th, correct?
Yes, correct.
The reason I do this is for the subscriptions. So if you're here, you enjoy the
you know
content, please
What
hit
the
like,
temperature
subscribe.
was in Canton in January 29th, 2022.
I do not know.
Don't you think that that would be an important piece of information
Yeah.
in analyzing where the phone of John O'Keefe was on the morning of January 29th?
I didn't think it was.
So
Why
you
not?
didn't think it was important,
Know how cold it was?
even though you issued a report discussing the temperature of the iPhone, and you did 2 test scenarios, one in a freezer, one in an ambient temperature of slightly above 33 degrees, and you didn't think it important to take the final step to see whether there was anything to be gained from that comparison to determine where that phone was located?
My testing proved that the battery temperature is affected by ambient temperature. My report shows the data that was on the device. I also don't know the condition that the phone was found in, whether it was in a case, whether it was in a pocket. So to me, the ambient temperature in Canton at the time wasn't particularly relevant. I just wanted to show what data the device had recorded.
The
That's
information that
that's
you
a
create from your digital
weak
forensics
sourcing.
analysis, including everything that's in the slide in your report, including battery.
that feels slappy. That
One sec, sir. I'll go back to the question. In digital forensics, you work with law enforcement often, correct?
Correct.
And you work in law enforcement in investigating cases, do you not?
Yes.
And so oftentimes, the law enforcement is using your digital forensics information to help them solve cases, correct?
Correct.
You didn't suggest to anybody on law enforcement
look up by the
that
time-
they
it
might
took me
want
30
to take
seconds.
a look at this temperature information to assist
it
in
took me
determining
2 seconds.
where this
How-
phone could have been by the temperature?
I
You never
looked that
raised
up.
that with them?
I did not.
What?
And do you know whether any law enforcement person was aware that you had done all this temperature analysis?
Without any clue
It
what
was
the
in my
temperature
report.
was?
So you create a report as part of this case, and you deem the temperature important enough to do 2 test scenarios, important enough to put it in a slide presentation to this jury.
No idea what it
Yet
was.
there's no discussion of that between you and any member of law enforcement as to what it means?
The details were provided in my report, and there was discussions, but it never came up as to say what was the temperature in Canton that night.
Oh, so there were discussions.
Not with law enforcement.
Oh, who were
As
the
part of my preparations for trial.
Oh, tell me about who you discussed this temperature information with.
It was
Hank
with
Brennan.
Hank.
You're hesitating, and I can't hear you. Who did you discuss
With
it
Hank.
Excuse me?
With Mr. Brennan.
Attorney
Sorry,
Brennan?
Yes.
You discussed temperature with,
Oh, you call him Hank? Oh, you friends? Are you friends? Are you friends? This is what Hank Brennan was asking yesterday when Daniel Wolf was like, oh, yeah, with Alan. I spoke with Alan Jackson. Oh, you're friends. Oh, you were talking with Hank. Oh, that's so nice. Oh, no, with Hanky Poo. Oh, okay.
Prosecutor Brennan.
It was in my report.
It was in your report, but you said you discussed. Which is it?
It's in my report, and the discussion was that it is in my report. I'm not in a position to suggest that investigations take place and change based on my report findings.
Oh, sir, I'm not suggesting what you just stated. I'm just trying to get information about, you mentioned the verb discussed. Didn't you, in your
Yes, I
answer
did.
moments ago?
Yes.
Thank you.
Isn't
so
discussed
much.
a verbal thing? It's not a written thing?
It was discussed in preparation for trial, yes.
Oh, so there was a discussion, a verbal discussion with Attorney Brennan about temperature in your preparation for trial.
Yes.
Was there any interest at all as to what this could actually mean for the potential location of Mr. O'Keefe's phone on these very important time periods in January 29th that might assist to determine at various times whether Mr. O'Keefe is in a covered building based upon the temperature rather than outside in a nor'easter on January 29th?
I'm sorry, what was the question there?
Yeah, the question is, was there any discussion about the investigative value of what you had done in determining where that phone could have been on key time periods on the morning of January 29th?
That wasn't part of the discussion, no.
It wasn't part of the discussion.
Wow.
We went through, you may recall in my questioning in your report, where you stated that it was possible that the phone could be inside the house of 34 Fairview based upon that big white circle. You testified that the low accuracy at certain points could be because of it entering a covered building, correct?
Correct.
And you do a temperature experiment to track the very accurate temperature change of an iPhone, and it doesn't match up the actual data with either of your test scenarios, and you don't raise that with anybody.
Sustained. You can ask it differently.
Did you ever put together in any kind of form your test scenario 1, your test scenario 2, and the actual temperature chart of the iPhone of Mr. O'Keefe?
So how do you mean put it together? As in compare the two?
Exactly. Compare the two and reach any conclusions about location, because you spent time, did you not, sir? A lot of time in your reports on location of the phone.
Yes.
But yet, with all that data, all that testing, all the experiments that you did, you didn't include in your slide presentation and you didn't include in your report what that could mean for the location of the phone, did you, sir?
I'm struggling to see the comparison there.
You're the only
Let
one.
me see if I can ask it in a different
Please.
way.
You're the only one. Oh my gosh.
Nowhere in your slide presentation did you have any discussion yesterday about how your test scenario, did you bring up, by the way, in your slide presentation yesterday,
I'll come
your
back to you on
battery
this.
temperature at all? Your tests?
Not the tests, no.
Right. So you didn't even raise yesterday in your presentation about where the phone might be located. You didn't even raise the experiments that you did, correct?
Sustained as to the terminology. Ask it differently.
Did you yesterday in your presentation to the jury in any way discuss your battery test scenario 1 and 2 in your March 2025 report?
I believe there was mention of testing, but not to the amount of detail to say what the testing was.
Right. So there was no detail given at all
No
about
detail.
it. You just mentioned that it occurred, but no detail in your discussion
Correct.
at all. And are you aware, with regard to the battery temperature, that battery temperature in investigations can be used to determine locations of phones at certain times? Are you aware of that?
No.
So you have never used battery temperature information in all your years in any way for any investigation of a case in determining location of a phone?
Again, I don't see how you can determine location of a device from a temperature reading, other than to say whether it was inside or outside.
So battery temperature and the chart that you gave that is up there, in your opinion, has no relevancy to the topic of where a phone might be to investigators in a case? Is that what you're saying?
Is that what you're saying, Mr. Whiffen?
I'm saying I can't take a temperature reading and make a determination about a GPS location based on the temperature reading.
That's not my question, though,
Okay.
sir, and I appreciate your answer, though. My question is, you work with law enforcement investigators regularly,
Yes.
correct? Isn't this information of potential relevance based upon your experience with investigations? Isn't this information at least potentially relevant in investigations?
I believe it could be. That's why I included it in my report.
Thank you. But you didn't include a discussion of it in your testimony yesterday, correct?
Correct.
Now, again, I just want to point out, he put the phone in his stupid
I
test.
just want to be clear on a final point on as regards.
It just goes to show how some scientific tests are more confusing than helpful. Like, they're just much more confusing. His stupid test that he puts in a freezer is not in any way mirroring the conditions that John's phone is in. And it only is frying him. It's hurting his testimony because unless he's asking reasonable questions. Well, based on your test, you throw it in a freezer. In that case, it should be losing 30 degrees in 13 minutes. And we saw John's phone only lost 10 degrees in an hour. So clearly he wasn't outside. It was a stupid test, especially since he doesn't even know the temperature in Canton, isn't accounting for the fact that John's phone is in his pocket, not nearly as exposed to the elements. And all he's doing is frying his own legitimacy and credibility. Because you're like, why are you even including this in here and implying that's something we should be learning from? When it's in no way useful. If anything, it's confusing because we're wondering why John's phone didn't freeze up as fast as your phone did in that freezer. This is sloppy. It's very sloppy. There's a lot of sloppiness here.
Temperature. Were you aware of the temperature in Canton on January 29th, 2022?
No, he's not.
I know it was a blizzard, but I don't know what the temperature was.
Lizard! Oh my God! There's a thump of snow falling from the sky. It's a miracle people didn't die from it. Well, I guess only one person.
May I have a moment to switch
Sure.
topics? Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Whiffen.
Oh my God, a blizzard. Maybe John got picked up by a wind in that blizzard and just hurled from one tree to another, smacking against different trees, and that's how he got those contusions. It's not a blizzard by Northeastern standards, by the standards of the jury that's sitting there. I've been living in this area for a while. That is not a blizzard. Trust me. I lived in the Northeast my entire life. That ain't no freaking blizzard. That's considered snowing. And that's what we saw at 6 o'clock in the morning, much less at 12:30 when it was like the report there said, what did it say, light snow? What's the report here? Look at this. Saying January 29th. It's like light snow. Look at this. You see down over here? Light snow, light snow, light snow, ice fog. Light snow.
Your Honor, if I may, I have one last point to make with temperature. If we could put deck 60 back up, please. Mr. Whiffen, if you bear with me, I just have one final set of questions. If you look at this chart, and you, under January 29th at 12:13, battery temperature of 82 degrees, but you then go down, what I'd like to start with is 12:37 again. And this is a key time point, 12:37. You've got a temperature of 72 degrees. And then 8 minutes later, 8 minutes, the temperature only drops 6 degrees, correct?
Correct.
Again, using 12:37 is what I refer to as the baseline. You go all the way down, and you see to 12:53 a temperature drop of only 11 degrees. Do you see that?
I do.
Thank you. That you can. Excuse me, Your Honor. One moment.
Okay.
You would think there would be a formula. If he was laying there, there'd be a formula to sort of figure out how quickly it should be losing heat. This doesn't seem like
The
a
final
difficult thing
data
to come up
point
with.
on this slide, Mr. Whiffen, and thank you for bearing with me on this. At 136, there's a temperature of 50 degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
Correct.
Several hours later, at 6:06, 4.5 hours, the temperature drop is only 7 degrees, correct?
Correct.
That is weird.
I'm switching. May I have a brief moment, Your Honor?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Trying to do what we can to catch up on my pausing.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
May I have exhibit 42, please?
They're at 10:42. I'm in 10:45. So I'm 3 minutes behind. It's hard for me to know how long to I've paused to put a clock up on what's going on there. It's very hard for me to do that
What is Exhibit 42?
It's
because I'm continually jumping back and forth.
We've got it. Thank you, Tori.
It's really I wouldn't even know how to
Yes.
start doing that.
Mr.
Thank
Whiffen, I'm handing you exhibit 42.
Yes.
I try to stay within 3 to 5 minutes of them.
Do you recognize Exhibit 42 from your March 2025 report?
I do.
And sir, just take a fair time to familiarize yourself with the exhibit before I start asking you questions. They're going to be very brief. And I'm going to be, you look what you need to, but I'm going to be focusing on just under detailed analysis communications on paragraph 3, on page 43, the top 3 or 4 entries.
Okay.
Tell me when you're ready, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I have 43, which is in evidence published?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
How does that
Mr.
help?
Wolf, please. And if you
My
could
clock says
enlarge,
1:38, an hour 38:05 right this
don't
time.
need the text. So
Why?
if we can just go to
How does that help anyone?
detailed analysis, communication, call history, and now if you could
You don't
just
send a super chat.
super
I'll look
enlarge.
through what you say.
the first few entries. Yes, that is great. So what I want to do is just cover the information here. Whose phone is the subject of the entries on this chart?
This is John's phone.
And if we start with the first entry, reading left to right, 12:14:36, end time 12:15:20, incoming call from Jen McCabe. Duration 44 seconds. You see that, sir?
I do.
You see, and is that a call that is answered?
Yes.
If you go to the next entry, 1847, just 12:18:47 to 12:19:23, outgoing call duration 36 seconds to Jen McCabe, duration 36 seconds. Do you see that, sir?
I do.
Is that a call that is answered?
Difficult to say. That could be a outgoing call that lasted 36 seconds of ringing. I believe it was answered.
Well, how is it that you can tell the first one was answered but not the second one?
Because it's an incoming call.
Okay, fair enough. So if we go to the third entry, 12:29:44, 12:29:51, incoming call from Jen McCabe. You see that, sir?
I don't mean to interrupt. Could I ask about the display?
You just said
What's happening? It's Hank is asking about the display. Gives us a chance to start catching up here. I'm at.
It's like an appropriate time to take our morning recess. So why don't we take a 15 or 20-minute recess?
Okay, it's 15-minute recess.
Jurors, right this way, please leave your notebook closed.
We go live now. Just trying to. I'm looking here at. Make myself a little bigger for a moment. I'm trying to. Oh, if you're trying to catch up and Chrome crashes because the memory leak finding your place is in this stream is hard. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. That's probably what that comic Matless Knife was about. How would I do that? How do I do that? I'd like to try to do that for you if I could. I have to look in how I can do that. Sure. Let's see what you're saying. So someone's like behind me and they want to resume from where they're up to and they're switching devices. That makes sense. That makes sense. I'm not sure how to help with that. I'm not sure how I would have that clock running the whole time. I have it here in my thing in the upper corner. That's StreamYard gives me a time, so I'm able to tell you how far along I am. But I don't know how to share that with you. I'm not sure how I would share that with you without giving you a very confusing perspective that I'm used to because I don't know how to do that. How would I set up not buy an old-timey clock? Oh, you're saying if I had a clock in the background behind me, so if I had a clock going, so you could see that clock and you would know, oh, okay, Joe's clock was showing 10:42. So you would know that to find where my clock is showing 10:42. That's an interesting idea. I'd have to sort of restructure how I have things set up behind me here. That's an interesting idea. I could try to do that. Not sure how I would do that. Just with my particular layout that I have now. I'll talk to Lady Lawgic about this. This is her area. I'll talk to her about it. That's not a bad idea. I can have some sort of digital clock behind me. And this way, when you're trying to find me, you'll be able to know where you're up to watching me. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. I think Alessi is doing a phenomenal job here. I think he's doing a really great job. That doesn't mean, by the way, none of this means that Karen didn't kill him. So, and I'm going to keep stressing this throughout the trial. I'm simply talking about the evidence that's being provided by the state and how powerful it is, or lacking in power it is, or how lacking sufficiency it is with respect to establishing guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. A lot of people can commit crimes and the state just can't prove it. And I think that Alessi is doing an effective job of saying that the compilation of forensic evidence that Whiffin has put together here is very sloppy. It's very, very sloppy. It's very ineffective as far as giving the jury confidence that they can reach guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Again, that's not to say she didn't kill him intentionally or accidentally, but it is to say that they're struggling to provide evidence that we can be confident beyond a reasonable doubt in. And for example, this temperature thing, they likely could have done a better job on it. They likely could have, because assuming that his temperature was the temperature of the phone was consistently dropping, assuming that that was happening, you can account for the fact that it would have dropped slower than in a freezer because it's got insulation either from John's coat or his pocket or from his own body heat. So the outdoor temperature, the ambient overall arching temperature, maybe somewhere between 25 and 28 degrees Fahrenheit. It's got the insulation of his body. It's going to take much longer for it to ice up. So, but all that requires some due diligence, where the Ian Whiffen, when he's doing his homework, says, okay, what was the temperature outside? What was where was the coat found? Was it in his coat? Was it pressed against his body? I mean, that's just like you do your due diligence. You're the forensic expert here. You do your due diligence, and then you can start doing experiments which actually are relevant and say, oh, look, this is what the one thing we know is we can get some sort of idea tracking the temperature of the phone battery and how that's changing over several hours. Likely would have come with something far more compelling than something that's very confusing, because what he gave us is confusing. Even if you think that Karen Reed should be fried and that she's definitely guilty, you can't deny the fact that what Whiffin is presenting here is confusing, because on the one hand, we're watching that the actual temperature of the battery is losing 6 degrees in a span of 8 minutes, and then over a span of 4 hours, is losing 7 degrees. Maybe there's an explanation for that, but this guy's not providing anything that we can rely on to explain that. And you would think that as the phone gets colder, I intuitively would assume that as it gets closer and closer towards 27 degrees Fahrenheit, the phone would start losing heat at a slower rate, right? Because it's not going to be going down towards, it's not like it can only be brought down to whatever the lowest temperature it's in. So the first few degrees probably would come off much faster than later degrees. But you sort of need to have someone sciencey who can explain that to the jury. The closer you get to the actual ambient temperature, it's still retaining some of its warmth from earlier. So the first 5 degrees, it might lose relatively quickly, and the next 5 degrees would be somewhat slower than the first 5 degrees. And you can show the rate of change, and you should be able to show the rate of change in different environments, depending on whether it's pressed against his body or whether it's in his pocket and it's not quite as insulated or as retaining its warmth from his own body heat. Because if you leave a phone in your coat pocket, it's got some insulation from the cold, but it's not going to get nearly as warm as if it's laying against your leg, the way many people have when they shove a phone in their pocket. So, and that would explain why over the first hour it only lost 10 degrees. And it requires some calculation, but it's not that hard to explain. Instead, he has, well, you know what? Hey, I did a science experiment. You know what my science experiment said? My science experiment said when you put something in a freezer, it gets colder. That's all we got from his science experiment. Hey, guess what? And it works on batteries too. If you put battery inside a freezer, it gets colder. Ooh, this is what our forensic expert is giving us here. And all you're doing is opening up the doorway that unless he comes marching on through, basically saying, well, his phone didn't get it cold as fast as yours did. So clearly he wasn't outside, which it doesn't prove that clearly he wasn't outside. If I was the state, I'd be ticked off when I saw this. I'd be really angry because this line of questioning from Alessi was predictable. It was very predictable. Hank Brennan should have said, what the hell are you giving me here? That's what he should have done. You should say, what the hell are you giving me here with you're losing 30 degrees over in 2 hours, whatever it is. That's ridiculous. That's not what happened with the phone. And there's good reason it didn't happen with the phone. If you're Hank Brennan and you genuinely believe that Karen Reed is evil incarnate and she killed this guy and he was outside the entire time, I would be pissed off if I was Hank. I'd be like, why are you giving me this? Which I know that the other side can come in here and say, well, his phone didn't lose heat that fast. It must be he wasn't outdoors. That's what he's going to say. That's what anyone would say. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. You don't need to be an expert attorney. You would just be like, well, all right. You want to say it's going to get cold that fast when he's outside? It didn't. He must not have been outside. That's what you're going to say. When the reality is, because of the fact that it's insulated, you can actually come to a conclusion, perhaps, and I assume on redirect, Hank Brennan is going to say, well, in your experiment, did you have a phone laying against the guy's body, helping keep it warm so it wouldn't lose the temperature quite as quickly? No. Oh, okay. So now what's Hank Brennan doing? He'd be fixing up, and I assume he's going to do this on redirect, so he's going to be trying to fix up Whiffin's crappy experiment. Whereas this whole thing works much better if you just don't show those stupid, misleading numbers in the first place. Because all it does is it makes Whiffin look incompetent. And the fact that the guy doesn't know what the temperature is outside, he can say it's not relevant. All that matters is that it's really cold. All right, I don't know. To me, that doesn't sound very sciencey. It doesn't sound like your typical scientific methodology. We always imagine that in scientific methodology, you're going to try and recreate the scenario as closely as possible, not just randomly chuck a phone. Sir, it does remind me of what someone right here. I don't remember which case it was. So what Squizgar said, this reminds me of scientifically throwing a cell phone across a room. I think it was in the Alex Murdaugh case where they wanted to see if it lit back up. So, like, does it turn on when the phone is going through the air? Will it automatically light up? So you know how we're going to test this out? We're just going to throw phones. It sounds so stupid. It sounds so insane. So, yeah, this is... So now if you're Hank Brennan, at the very best, you end up basically discrediting. What's he going to be doing? He's going to be discrediting his own experts' report that was submitted here as being somewhat misleading, rather than just putting in a report and saying, no, you have to fix this report. You got to do a different kind of test. He should be talking about the type of testing he's doing before he's doing it. This is ridiculous. This is just ridiculous. So you think that's putting on a compelling case in chief? When you put up an expert witness and then you have to prove that his own tests are stupid? Like, is that the way would you ever imagine you're a lawyer? Would you want to try a case like that? I'm going to put my expert on the stand, and then when the other side shreds into pieces and says, "Oh, you see, their expert proves our case, that proves the case of the defense," I'm going to say, "No, my expert's an idiot." Like, why would you do a case this way? Why? This is not the lunch break. She takes a 15-20 minute break in the middle of the morning. So we're in the mid-morning break. Let me check over in Zung says, Joe, they need to replace who's asking the questions to the prosecution. He's coming off as hostile the last 2 days. That's Hank Brennan. I think he's losing his crap. I think he's losing his mind. I think he sees how badly this case is going in the first week. As a defense lawyer, wouldn't you go through this report and ask him about it and prep for the case? It seems like a sloppy DEA and police who didn't. As a defense lawyer, I don't know if you get to access that. I mean, I don't. You would think they should have had a chance. On the other hand, you sort of relish in the idea of humiliating him in front of the jury. So perhaps you don't want to tip that hand. Maybe certain questions you ask him just to make sure that he's going to answer what you're expecting him to say. I don't know if they had a chance to pose this guy or not. We are still on a break here, in case you're wondering. I should have the little thing playing in the background here. Let's see. But I'll tell you this. This is the sort of cross that litigators relish. They relish it. This is the fun part of being a lawyer, doing what Alessi's doing right here and now. This is the part, everyone was so enamored with the job Camille Vasquez did when she was crossing Amber Heard, and she did a thorough and effective job. I think some of the praise was a little bit overstated, but she did a thorough and effective job. Alessi here is doing a very thorough and effective job. But this is what we relish, because you have an opportunity to basically go out there and beat the hell out of someone, and you know that they have no possible answers. This is why you become a litigator. It's like I'm gonna basically go out there and prove to the world. You know how, like, if you're ever in an argument and you're trying to prove I'm right, you're wrong. That if you're ever in an argument, everyone when they're arguing, it's like, no, I'm right and you're wrong. Here, when there's so much fodder to show that you're right and the other side is wrong, it's a very exhilarating feeling where you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm about to show this entire room and the entire world that I'm right and he's wrong, and there's nothing he can do about it. It's a phenomenal feeling. And you do feel like that sometimes when you're setting them up and walking them in. Here we go. Come on. Come to me. Come to me. Give me what I want. It's coming. I know you're walking right into it. And this is why when you're on the witness stand, someone asked earlier about, like, how he seems like he's equivocating. You know that you're potentially just about to step on a landmine. So you're sort of stepping. It's like you're just sort of like those cartoon, like creeping up on someone, like stepping so with such trepidation. So, but he could have made a far more compelling thing, because I do think the battery really is so far from what I've seen. The battery is actually the most compelling evidence that he wasn't inside. The geolocation, as I told you, that seems like he was almost trying to cherry pick. Let me give you data that shows him outside as much as I possibly can, and I'm going to dismiss any data which may imply he was inside as not being narrow enough, when the very reason it might not be narrowed and centered on him enough is because he's inside. And you can't get the same geolocation fix on someone when it's blocked by steel and concrete of the house itself. So that does seem properly cherry picked, which I actually think Alessi could have hit on that a little bit. I would have hit on that a little bit harder, to basically say, well, so when he's indoors, it's less likely you'll get a fix. And those are the points that you left out, anything that didn't have a firm fix. So great job giving us geolocation of when all the times he's outdoors, and leaving out all the times that he's indoors. You didn't even timestamp the times that he's outdoors. So for all we know, all of those happen between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. and you left out the 2 hours that he was indoors when the phone could never get a fix on him, as to within 5 or 10 meters of where he was in the house. He didn't really pound on that as hard as I would have to make that crystal clear for the jury, that Whiffin specifically chose tight geolocation circles for the purpose of which would necessarily be more likely, at the very least, to exclude all of the evidence that he was in the house. You could sort of draw it from what he said, but he could have zeroed it. He's zeroing on the temperature a lot more. But he really could have done that with the geolocation somewhat more. So, and it's important for him to hit on the temperature, because frankly, the steadily dropping temperature of the battery it does lead one to start concluding that he wasn't inside. You can't deny that. That he never was inside. You want to tell me that he was inside and that he, some that happened? Why is it losing during the first hour? Why is it losing all his heat? And I think that if you're the state, for me, this is the most compelling evidence, at the very least, that he didn't die inside, didn't suffer these injuries indoors. It is. I'm just telling you, as someone who's never watched this trial, doesn't know what's coming next in this trial, other than what was told to us in the opening statement from the state and defense. I'll tell you right now, to me, the steadily losing battery temperature is at least telling me that the opening statement the defense gave me is flawed. But then you get this guy who's hitting on the battery temperature, and he's doing second grade science experiments, which seem wholly irrelevant and don't really account for the actual conditions that the phone was in and doesn't match the temperature drop in the phone. So what the hell is that? Yeah, you had 2 trials to try to fix this up. 2 trials in 3 years to try to fix up your case. And this is what you got? 3 years and 2 trials? I mean, come on. Also, in case you came late, one of the points that, with respect to geolocation, that I thought Alessi did make, which I was unaware of, was that your own geolocation data has him walking 36 steps in 20 seconds when he leaves the car, and somewhere like a distance of 84 feet toward the house. The distance from the flagpole, which is around where he's dropped off, where you're saying he was the whole night, the flagpole to the front door is 72 feet. So, and he said he's moving towards the house. He almost doing our work doing the work for the defense. They showed the wound photos on day 1, I think, during opening statements, but we haven't seen them since. So, Johnny says, Brennan reminds me of Gilbert Gottfried after an afternoon session yesterday. I missed that. That was a while ago. Rosellian says, Ricka the J Gamer says, if I was the guy in voir dire when asked about informing the court of accidental misrepresentation, I probably would have said, quote, defense counsel is an officer of the court. This is my due diligence. You don't want them to seem as if, I think Alessi did a good job in portraying Wolf as doing what he thought he needed to do. So it's best to let the attorney rehabilitate whatever issues may have arisen in the mind of the judge through the direct examination from Brennan, and let the lawyer do that, rather than risking looking like you're being snarky or disrespectful to the court. That's what I would think. Rosellian says, so I did a couple of computer forensics classics, and we had to do was a mock trial. He brought in 2 lawyers and we got questioned. One thing we learned was only give short answers to what was asked. Yes, that's true. You should, in general, give short answers. It's better off. And whenever I'm prepping someone for a deposition, I'll always, or for trial, you'd be like, when the other side's questioning, listen to the question, think about what they're asking, give very direct answers. Very short answers. If someone's asking if you have the time, you don't answer, it's 11:13 a.m. You say yes or no. Do you have the time? Yes. No. They say, what time is it? Then you're able to answer the question. Make sure we're live here. We are live. I will remind you all that the reason I stream these trials is to help build my numbers, because trial work is the only way that my channel ever sees any growth. So I would be much obliged if you can hit like and subscribe. If you're new here, you like the content, I would be very, very appreciative of it. Make sure. Just trying to figure out the whole phone thing, like whether, the whole clock thing, whether I can put up clock behind me. I'm trying to figure. I'm still torn on that. I'm still torn as to whether or not I can manage to do that. So these are the moments that I'd like to be like talking to like another attorney. This is what I was trying to explain to the audience, as far as like there's an upside to the panel and there's a downside to the panel. Because I like being able to explain to you in the moment, pause the video, say boom, 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 and get that out, and not engage in a 5-minute conversation with some other attorney sitting here, but a matter of actually, you know, just explaining something to the audience that I feel like most non-attorneys may be unaware of, and that especially if it's, you know, something that's relevant in the moment rather than just referencing something that happened 5, 10, 20 minutes, a half hour ago. I feel like it enhances your viewing experience greatly. And that's one of the reasons I like going solo. On the other hand, when we have these extended breaks of just OnlyFan here, it's better when I have a panel that I can talk to. This afternoon, I'm probably going to join with an attorney for the afternoon show. In fact, I'll tell you, I'll probably be joining up with Nick in the afternoon.
Go to the session, please be seated.
I like that idea.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Leslie.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach, please?
Yes.
I have a replacement.
Okay.
So, Your Honor, I have a replacement Exhibit 42 redacted, obviously to replace Exhibit 42, and it's per stipulation with Mr. Wright.
Should be that.
Thank you.
May I present it to Mr. Whiffen? Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Whiffen. May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
And Mr. Wolf, if you could again, please enlarge, we're going to be focusing on the top entry of the chart again. May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Whiffen, we had started going through the top three entries. The first one you had indicated was answered. The second one you, as I understand it, could not tell. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then the third entry, which is reading left to right, 12:29:44, end time 12:29:51. Incoming call duration 8 seconds from Jen McCabe.
Correct.
That's the third one. So because it's an
So,
incoming.
Mr. Leslie, we need to enlarge this.
Okay, Your Honor. Mr. Wolf, can you enlarge that pursuant to the judge's order? Is that sufficient, Your Honor?
If you can make it as large as possible for the jurors, please, even if you have to do smaller segments.
We
If
never.
we have to, Mr. Wolf, knock off the final right-hand column, that's insignificant. There you go.
All right, that's better. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
It was much smaller
Yeah, Your
yesterday.
Honor.
Yes.
Thank you. So I want to now go to the last one for this Exhibit 42. It's reading from left to right, 12:29.
Show us the screen.
12:29:51. Incoming call duration at seconds from Jen McCabe. Again, it restates duration 8 seconds.
Correct.
Given that it's an incoming call, you can conclude that that was answered, correct?
Correct.
Now, if we could go back down and focusing on just the first three by way of example, Mr. Wolf, do just as Her Honor has requested, enlarge it as large as possible. Those three after the first three. Yep, starting there. Just take the first three by way of example. All right. Mr. Whiffin, you should feel free to look at the hard copy Exhibit 42 if that's more helpful to you. But what I want to do is to focus on start time 12:33:35, reading across activity, incoming call, unanswered, and then to the right, Karen Reed. Do you see that, sir?
I do.
And do you see the same types of entries for 3409 and 3438?
I do.
And those calls are unanswered, correct?
Correct.
So in contrast to the, and now Mr. Walker, we can go back to the chart, trying to capture 6 and enlarge those once last time. Thank you. So in the first one at 1436, and then skipping one to 2944, those are answered, but then starting, excuse me, at 3335 and 3409, those are unanswered, correct?
Correct.
You can take that down, Mr. Wolf. Thank you. We have a moment, Your Honor, to switch topics. Mr. Whiffen, when did you start working on this case? What was the date, approximate date
On this case or on this exhibit?
on this case?
Approximately September 2023.
So over a year and a half.
Correct.
How many times have you been in Norfolk County?
This is my second time.
So you were here once previously.
Correct.
Do you recall yesterday discussing what you had done with an iPhone, driving around and then moving it with your hand?
Correct. Yes.
In the year and a half that you've been on this case, did you ever take an iPhone and do the same activity on the route that you were discussing yesterday between 34 Fairview and One Meadows?
I actually did it on Sunday night.
I'm sorry?
I did it 2 days ago on Sunday night.
And with regard to your time on this case, what was the results of that?
I object, Your Honor.
Or
I'll
is
need to
it-
be heard briefly.
I'm sorry?
I object, I need to be heard briefly.
Okay. Come on over.
It's not in his report. I don't know what he's going to say. That's what it was. That's what it is. He's like, I don't know what he's going to say about what he did, what happened on his little expedition 2 days ago. If your expert all of a sudden starts telling you new information that you don't know anything about, you're very hesitant to have that just come out there. But you can't say that to the judge. You can't give that to the judge. So instead, you could say he's being asked about his research that's not in the report. But I don't know how strong that argument is. We'll see if if Auntie Bev allows it in. I don't know. I would think it should be allowed in. They're not supposed to be doing their own research, Linz. They're not supposed to be doing that. They're not supposed to be getting that. I agree. You open the door. He's like, wait, what's he gonna say? I don't know. I don't know. No one knows. No one knows. You would think that he would have finished his research, before the trial started. Is that where he's going here? That the elevation seems like crap? And the idea is to basically show that the Waze and the phone data is not productive. Okay.
Yeah, Your Honor.
Yes.
Mr. Whiffen, I am now going to proceed to a different topic. Do you recall discussing the Google search, how long to die in the cold?
I do.
And you discussed that in your direct testimony, correct?
I did.
You were a police officer for years before getting into the data forensic analysis of cell phones, correct?
Correct.
You were a response officer of the South Yorkshire Police from 2004 to 2009.
Correct.
You continued policing with the Calgary Police, working patrol, correct?
Correct.
You work frequently with law enforcement.
I do.
Indeed, law enforcement is the predominance of your work, correct?
Probably about 80% of the work. Yes.
What percent?
About 80%.
80?
80.
Your work is used in investigations for law enforcement, correct?
Sometimes, yes.
In your area of work, you use and apply various forensic methods that are extracted, that data is extracted from a cell phone, correct?
Correct.
And you have various forensic methods to analyze that data, correct?
Correct.
And that data that you analyze is often used by law enforcement in their investigations, right?
It can be, yes.
It can be, but it also is from your experience, correct?
I'm sorry, are we talking about my actual analysis or analysis that's created by the tools that me and Cellbrite create?
Your analysis.
Okay, my analysis is typically used in investigations, yes.
So it's typically your
It's the
analysis
same answer to
typically
both.
used by law enforcement.
On the cases I work, yes.
Right. And you know that is going to be the case oftentimes when you're doing your analysis, correct?
Correct.
And forensic software is used to gain access to people's devices, correct?
Correct.
Such as cell phones, right?
Correct.
So And there's something called an extraction process from a cell phone that you discussed in your direct testimony.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I want to cover, because it would be covering old ground, but I want to cover some of it.
Okay.
It's important, is it not, that the extraction process on a cell phone be performed correctly?
It is, yes.
And that's so that the data that's extracted from a cell phone is complete, correct?
Correct.
So that the data is correct,
Correct.
and so that the data is reliable.
Correct.
And data forensic examiners and people in your area of work need to ensure that the extraction file has not been tampered with, correct?
Correct.
Because if an
Is that where we're going?
extraction
Tampering?
file
We're going to tampering?
has the possibility of tampering, then the information and data from it can be unreliable, correct?
Correct.
And there's a generally accepted methodology for how to perform an extraction of data from a cell phone, correct?
Typically, yes.
One of the key ways to determine whether the data extracted from a cell phone is valid and has integrity is to evaluate whether the extraction process created what is called a hash value, correct?
Correct.
And a synonym for a hash value is a hash signature, correct?
Correct.
And a hash value or hash signature, I'm just going to use hash value. Is that acceptable to you?
I'm fine with that.
Thank you. So a hash value is a unique and usually consists of a long string of numbers and letters that's generated from the data file from a cell phone using a computer algorithm, right?
Correct.
And one of the computer algorithms is SHA 256, right?
Correct.
And is it a fair analogy to state that a hash value can be thought of as fingerprint for a data file from a cell phone?
Yes.
And is it also a rough analogy that a hash value can function like the seal on a milk container? In other words, if you open the milk container and the seal's broken, that the same analogy can be provided that if you don't have a valid hash value, then there is a question with regard to the contents of a cell phone, just as there might be concern about contents of a milk carton. Is that a fair general analogy?
Yeah, if the hash doesn't match, then something has changed in the data.
So if the hash doesn't match or you can't determine a valid hash file, it's sort of like opening up a milk container in that seal cap is off, correct?
Okay, I'll accept that.
Thank you. Now, if a data file is altered in any way, the hash algorithm is going to produce a different letter in numeric string than the previous hash value for that same alleged data, correct?
Correct.
So that alpha numeric number is important because it can, if it's different, then it means something happened to that data, correct?
Correct.
And isn't it important for examiners, anybody in data forensics, to know whether or not the data they're looking at has a valid hash value?
It would depend, in my opinion, on the origin of the data.
But you would agree that it's much better to have a valid hash value for data than not, correct?
I'd like to see the hash value match, yes.
You would like to see the hash value match,
Yes.
correct? Now, once data from an iPhone is properly extracted and you get a hash value, then the examiners of the data seek to pass and decode the data to try and make some sense of the data in a more user-friendly format so that a report can be created for investigators, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall preparing a report for the iPhone belonging to Jen McCabe dated December 2024?
I do, yes.
And in that report, you discussed your views of a Google search of how long to die in the cold, correct?
Correct.
And in that report, you rendered various conclusions about that Google search, correct?
Correct.
And you rendered various conclusions about what is called a timestamp.
Correct.
And the timestamp that was in question was 2:27:40 a.m. on January 29th on Jen McCabe's phone, correct?
Correct.
And the question that you were looking at is that timestamp that appeared in the data, that timestamp of 2:27:40 a.m., whether that belonged to the Google search, how long to die in the cold, correct?
Correct.
And you testified yesterday with regard to that very issue, correct?
Correct.
Now, in your report of December 2024, you discussed the hash value of that cell phone, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yesterday, in your direct testimony, you didn't mention anything about the hash value with regard to Jen McCabe's phone, did you?
Not in my testimony, no.
The answer is no, correct? No. However, isn't it correct that in your report of December 2024, you had an issue with the hash value from the data from that phone?
I didn't have an issue with the hash value at all, no.
So you didn't note that it was not possible with the gray key extraction as the PDF containing the extraction hash value that it was unsigned? That was not an issue in your report?
The hash value matches, but because I didn't do the extraction, I'm unable to actually validate that was an original hash and hadn't been modified.
Exactly. So you didn't do the extraction, but you couldn't validate the hash value, could you?
No.
So you couldn't determine whether or not any of the data on that cell phone of Jen McCabe had been tampered with, correct?
I take a holistic view of the data and try to find anomalies and didn't see any that raised any flags.
That wasn't my question, sir.
Okay.
I'll try it a different way. You concluded that the hash value was unsigned, correct?
Correct. They were always unsigned. Okay, apologies.
You concluded that the hash value was unsigned, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And you went on, did you not, in your report?
I'm going to pause and say about this comment from Serpent Snowboard. The point they're not making is that because he's a cop, he's corrupting the data. The point that he's making about this whole hashtag thing is that the data was corrupted before it got to him, and he's analyzing corrupted data. That's the point. And from the fact that the hashtag is inaccurate, that's implying to the defense wants to say that it's possible that the police corrupted it before it got to him, and he just basically relied on their garbage source material to reach a conclusion which is in error. So the data itself could be wrong if it's been corrupted willfully, intentionally, or accidentally. That's the point they're making.
Say that this hash value could be used as a suggestion of authentication, but cannot be guaranteed 100%, correct?
Correct.
Did you discuss any of that doubt, that suggestion of authentication, but can't be guaranteed 100% at all in your direct testimony yesterday?
I didn't know.
And again, hash values are very important concepts for data forensic examiners, correct?
For integrity, yes.
Do you know the chain of custody of Jen McCabe's iPhone?
I don't know.
So you don't know the chain of custody of her iPhone. You have an unsigned hash value, and you can't guarantee the hash value authentication, correct?
No,
The objection's overruled.
not from the hash value, no.
Let's go back to the 22740 timestamp and the question of whether that timestamp is associated with a Google search, house long to die in the cold. You understand there is a dispute as to whether that search was performed at 2:27:40 a.m. as the timestamp states, or whether that was performed later in the morning, say around 6:23 a.m., correct?
Correct.
You understand there's a dispute.
Yes.
And do you understand that the defense asserts that that timestamp means what it says, the Google search occurred at 2:27:40 a.m.?
I'm going to allow it. Do you understand that?
I do.
I didn't hear your answer, sir.
I understand.
You understand that?
Yes.
So there are various data forensic tools, are there not, to evaluate what is called an artifact, this timestamp, correct?
Correct.
And those data forensic tools include Celebrite tools, your company's tools.
Yes.
And some of those Celebrite tools are called Physical Analyzer.
Correct.
And then you have another tool, I believe, called Insights.
Insights is a suite that includes Physical Analyzer.
Okay.
But yes,
So it's Insights is a
it's
suite,
essentially the same tool.
essentially the same tool. So this Insight, well, essentially, but they're two different tools, correct?
The two different versions of the same tool.
Thank you. Two different versions of the same tool.
Yes.
But there are other tools from other companies, are there not, sir?
There are.
And a competitor of Celebrite that can be used to analyze that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp and to potentially resolve that dispute of whether the Google search house long to die in the cold occurred at 2:27:40 a.m. or later at 6:23 or so a.m. There's other companies and tools that can be used for that, correct?
Correct.
And isn't one of the companies that can be used a competitor of Celebrite called Magnet Forensics?
Correct.
And they have a tool called Axiom, AXIOM, that evaluates questions such as this, correct?
They do.
And is Magnet Forensics a reputable company?
They are.
Am I correct that yesterday you essentially said that as of today, no Celebrite tool, no Insight suite such as Physical Analyzer, today shows that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp?
Correct. If you use any version from the last approximately year, that timestamp won't show up.
It won't show up as you sit here today.
Correct.
But that's not always been the case
Correct.
with regard to Celebrite forensic tools, correct?
Correct.
As a matter of fact, in the first proceeding in this case, in June of 2024, when you testified under oath, the situation with the forensic tools was Celebrite Forensics Insights did not show the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, but another version of Physical Analyzer did show it, correct?
Correct.
In that second program, that second tool, Physical Analyzer, not only showed it at 2:27:40 a.m., but it showed it as a deleted state, correct?
It's a deleted record, yes.
A deleted record.
Yes.
Did you mention that yesterday in your direct testimony?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
No, we changed it since then.
Exactly. You changed it since then.
Yes.
Your company removed it
Yes.
after the first trial.
Before the first trial.
Well, you removed it from one tool before the first trial, but you didn't remove it from the other Physical Analyzer program, did you?
Up until the following version was released.
No, I'm talking about the time of trial when you were testifying.
I appreciate that. There's some complexities with how we released the software, which resulted in one being released several weeks later and one being released several weeks earlier.
At the time of trial,
Yes.
last year in June, when you were testifying under oath, one of the Celebrite tools showed the timestamp of 2:27:40 a.m., correct?
Correct.
But that timestamp doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist today, does it?
Correct.
Celebrate removed it.
Yes.
All right,
You
could I-
mentioned.
Could I see Counselor Sidebar for
Aye,
just a minute,
yes, Your Honor.
please?
What the F? What the hell? Why? 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 What is happening? Jeez. Am I current? I think I'm current. I think I'm live. Unbelievable. Maybe I'm not live. Oh, no, mouse me. Why?
Go ahead,
So-
Mr. Leslie.
Thank you, Your Honor. So with regard to the first proceeding, there was one Celebrite forensic tool that still showed the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp,
Correct.
and it was shown in a deleted state.
The record was deleted, yes.
The record was deleted. And then after that, Celebrite outright removed the timestamp from, so none of its programs had, correct?
Again, if I could explain a little bit about how it works.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If you could just respond to my question. Is that correct?
The timestamp's been removed, yes.
However, the competitor of Celebrite that we just talked about, Magnet Forensics Axiom,
Yes.
that program at the first proceeding showed the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, correct?
Correct.
And as a matter of fact, as you sit here today, the Magnet Forensics program, Axiom, still shows the 2:27:04 a.m. timestamp, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
And Magnet Forensic Axiom is a reputable company, correct?
Correct.
Celebrite removed that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, which is in a deleted state,
in response to issues raised in the first proceeding, correct?
It was changed because of the research that I did, and that was verified by the forensic research group.
But the issue arose because of what had come up in the first proceeding, correct?
In the first investigation prior to the proceeding, yes.
In the first investigation in this case, correct?
Yes.
So Celebrite, after the first proceeding, after the investigation, just outright went and removed the timestamp.
It's not unusual to change the
I
code.
didn't ask if I just asked whether
Yep,
they
we
removed.
removed it.
But Magnet Forensic Axiom still shows that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, right?
Again, they refer to it differently, which is why they can
But they
do that.
still show it.
They do still show it.
Just finish the answer.
So,
Sorry. Just let him finish the answer. Is that what you said, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, my apologies, but I'm having trouble hearing, but I'll pause more just to make sure you're done. In that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, the dispute is whether it's associated with the search, House Long to Die in the Cold, correct?
Correct.
Let's talk a little bit more about the first proceeding in this case.
I'm a little. I'm not going to kid you. I'm a little confused by this whole thing here. He basically was saying, I thought yesterday on direct that he could tell you what she looked up at 2:27:40 in the morning. I think it was some basketball website or something that he said. Whether or not it's still being associated by MFI, the competitor of Cellbrite, I don't know that makes Cellbrite look bad, rather than maybe because if in fact his claim was correct on direct, and maybe I'm missing something, maybe I'm confused by the back and forth here. It's possible. But if in fact it would seem to be a glitch that you're going to show a timestamp on a website that's open on a tab hours after. And it's going to show that this website was open hours earlier based on what time you open the tab. That seems to be a glitch, not a feature. So I'm not sure why Cellbrite removing that would be a bad thing. I'm not kidding you. I'm a little confused by what to make out of this. I'm not sure if we're supposed to be left confused or not, but I'm sitting here as a potential juror. When I'm hearing this, I'm not looking at this necessarily as a win for the defense. I'm looking at this as I'm just like very confused as to like what's happening with this timestamp and who's putting this timestamp on. Is it Cellbrite? Is it Safari? Is it the operating system? Is it MFI? Just telling you, I'm confused. And if I'm confused, I can guarantee you at least one person on that jury is confused. Was the phone found under the body without delayed time and started getting cold? We don't know yet. We don't know where it was found. Yeah, there's been no testimony about exactly where it was. It's a good question. It's a reasonable question. We just don't know. Yeah, but it's because of this trial that they're like, it's stupid to have a website that's open at 6 a.m. look like it was open 4 hours
testimony
earlier.
under oath in that first
That's
proceeding.
not a bad thing. That would be an improvement, I would think. I'm trying to be
recall
fair to both sides here and just trying to figure out the truth.
Stating that it was your opinion as to whether that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp was associated or not with the Google search "House Long to Die in the Cold."
I believe so.
Right. So you called it your opinion.
Yes.
We don't know
You
that
didn't
from testimony yet.
describe it as a fact. You described it as your opinion, correct?
Correct.
Because you realize that there are other fair interpretations of that timestamp and when the Google search occurred, correct?
I think even if I believe it's a fact, it's my opinion.
Right. So it's your opinion.
Yes.
So you also, do you recall stating that there's plenty of other evidence on that extraction that shows what activity was occurring at 2:27:40? You recall that?
Correct.
And you use the word evidence, correct?
Correct.
But that evidence on the Celebrate program is now gone, correct?
No,
It's not gone?
it's not gone.
So the 22740 timestamp still exists in Celebrite programs?
Sorry, are we talking about the additional evidence that shows what
Oh, no.
happened at 22740?
No, I'm just asking whether,
Okay.
I thought we had that clear, but I thought, is the 22740 AM timestamp show up on any Celebrate program as you sit here today?
The decoded value does not show a timestamp for
Thank you.
that artifact.
Sir, does your work include shaping how examiners will see the data when they open it?
Yes.
So you shape how the data is going to be, correct?
Yes, we have
Yes?
ways to create the data so it's usable. Yes.
So the answer is
shape it.
yes, you
Yes.
shape the data.
Yes.
These various forensic tools, Celebrite, Insight Suite, including Physical Analyzer, Magnet Forensics Axiom, these are all tools, and we know that no one has access to the Apple source code on iPhones, correct?
Correct.
And the best source of information about what may be happening inside of an Apple iPhone would be if one could get the source code and look into the source codes to see what's actually happening, correct?
Correct.
So what happens is in data forensics, because Apple considers it proprietary and people can't access the source code, there's these various data forensic tools that in some ways try to serve as a surrogate, given the fact that there's no access to source code, correct?
Correct. That's fair.
So the best information would come from the Apple source code, but nobody has access to that, or few people do. Therefore, these other forensic tools are used.
Correct.
So sometimes examiners have to give opinions like you give because you don't have access to the source code, correct?
Correct.
So it's your opinion oftentimes with regard to ultimate conclusion.
Based on research and testing. But yes,
Not
it's an opinion.
100% absolute certainty because you don't have access to the source code, correct?
Correct.
You have a moment, Your Honor, to switch topics, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
So it seems like I was correct that we're spending much of the day. Oh, I can catch up here.
Before I do switch topics, a couple points on the 22740 timestamp, if I may, Mr. Whiffin. The Google search in question associated with that timestamp, the dispute over that, is house long to die in the cold, correct?
Correct.
And you understand, sir, do you understand the significance if Jen McCabe
We're
made
together.
that
So
Google
we're showing a
search
screen.
house long to die in the
Which one's-
cold at 2:27:40 a.m. instead of 6:23 a.m.? Do you understand the significance of that?
Of course.
Sustained.
He said yes, Your Honor.
I'm sorry. I said sustained.
Oh, thank you.
What the
Your Honor. I didn't
hell?
hear that.
Jurors, strike any answer that may have.
Wow. She let
What
other
do
answers
you
get through.
understand
They answered in time.
to be the significance of the
Wow.
dispute over
Gosh.
227:40 timestamp?
Sustained.
Mr. Whiffin, with regard to the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, have you looked at any
He's going to be here the rest of the morning.
forensic
Redirect's going to be at least an hour
tools
also.
to answer that question other than Celebrite tools in your tool Ardex?
I've used Axiom as well.
So you used Axiom, and so did you therefore see that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp still appeared?
Yes.
Did you discuss that with the jury yesterday, that you analyzed the Axiom program and that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp still appears?
I didn't. No,
You did not.
I did not.
Could we please, with the court's permission, put the PowerPoint presentation back up and go to deck 26? Mr. Whiffin, does an iPhone discriminate between whether it's in a car, a bus, a bicycle, or walking?
It can, but I don't have the research on that.
Right. So as you sit here today, you can't say that an iPhone can tell the difference between a car, bus, bicycle, or walking, correct?
The iPhone can, but I don't. I haven't researched that data fully enough to understand it forensically.
So you as
I
you sit here,
can't, but
you
the phone
can't.
can.
Does an iPhone merely register movement? Let me rephrase that. Does an iPhone register movement?
It does.
Do you recall yesterday discussing movement at a speed of about 1.4 miles per hour at 12:24:37 a.m. on
Yes.
January 29th, 2022?
I do.
A person walking at a normal to even a slow pace can walk at approximately 1.4 miles per hour. Is that correct?
It sounds reasonable.
And does it sound reasonable that a normal speed of walking is between 2 and 4 miles per hour?
Reasonable.
Switching topics, Your Honor, if I could have a moment.
I'm caught up now.
When you were examining Jennifer McCabe's phone, you used an operating system called iOS 14, correct?
That's one of the versions of iOS I used, yes.
That was one of the versions.
Yes.
Do you understand that Jen McCabe's phone was actually using iOS version 15?
Yes, I do. 15.2.1.
15.2?
2.1.
Thank you. And do you recall saying with regard to iOS 15.1, et cetera, that the iOS operating system, your words, had fundamentally changed, correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to, we're back to Jen McCabe's phone, we're back to 22740, the issue of deletions. You stated yesterday that deletion occurred after January 31 of 2022. Is that correct?
Correct.
But you couldn't determine how that deletion occurred with certainty, correct?
Correct.
And you gave 3 possibilities that you analyzed, correct?
3 or 4, yes.
3 or 4. And one of them was deleted by user, correct?
Correct.
Another one was that the search occurred but never loaded.
That would be the reason that there was no data found in the history.db file.
But that was another of the 3 or 4 reasons, correct?
That wouldn't cause the deletion of the record
Right, but-
necessarily.
Right. And then you you discussed those possibilities, but you can't state with certainty how that deletion occurred, can you?
Correct.
You have doubts about how it occurred, is that fair?
Yeah, I have an idea how it occurred, but I can't
You
prove
had,
it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
No, please finish. I want to make sure you finish.
I have an idea of how it occurred, but I've not been able to replicate it. So my idea is unsubstantiated.
So is it fair to say you have some doubts
Yes.
about how the deletion occurs?
That's fair.
And you believe your doubt is reasonable
Yes.
under the circumstance?
Yes.
He's trying to find another basis just to plant the seed that even their own expert has reasonable doubt. Obviously, for those of you who missed it, on any area they possibly can. But having reasonable doubt as to how it was removed isn't really reasonable doubt as to whether or not the crime was committed.
Your Honor, that is the extent of my questions of the witness at this time.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's change our banner to redirect. It's been all day so far on cross-exam as we anticipated.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As a forensic analyst, do you study data?
I do.
Do you consider it a science?
I do.
Are you a criminal investigator like a police officer in your present role?
Not anymore.
Are you a detective in your present role helping aid one side or
You say
another
yes.
in an investigation?
I'm not, no.
Please say yes.
At some point,
Oh.
you and I spoke about reviewing phones.
We did.
You had begun your whole process in some of this work before you had met me.
Correct.
And I'd asked you to look at Mr. O'Keefe's phone.
Correct.
Did I ever tell you what you should look for?
No.
Did I ever tell you
You
what
should've.
I wanted to see or what I wanted the results to be?
No.
Did I ever share with you parts of the investigation that had nothing to do with your actual data analysis?
No.
Would it be inappropriate or not helpful for an advocate to provide you information that might taint or influence your thinking when you're looking at data in a case?
Objection, Your Honor.
100% it would be
Why?
Problematic.
Why? Say,
When I
I
asked
want
you
you
to
to
look at data in this case, did I ever express any opinion whatsoever that I cared one way or another what your results would find?
Other than the fact that I work for the
Did I
state,
ever attempt to shape
we're
or
prosecutors.
influence your process by offering you information that had nothing to do with your assessment of data?
No.
And so as a scientist, what a legal investigator or an advocate for either side thinks, is that relevant to you?
No.
The data is the data?
The data is the data. I can explain my opinions on the data.
The science is the science?
The science is the science.
That's sustained. Watch the form.
Now,
He's leading.
counsel showed you some parts of your report regarding John O'Keefe's cell phone, didn't he?
Yes,
You saw select pages from that report,
correct.
a few pages you were asked about,
Yes,
but you wrote an entire report, didn't you?
I did.
And do you think that your entire report puts into perspective some of those select pages that you were shown?
Definitely, yes.
I move to introduce Mr. Whiffin's entire report.
Okay.
So he has a lot of rehabilitation to do of this witness. I expect him to take the rest of the morning on this redirect. I would think. I don't know if they'll go back to like a recross and a redirect. I don't know. It depends how long he takes here. But I expect him to be going for a while here. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, why didn't you? It's not a matter of telling him that Hank Brennan was directing the nature of the investigation. It's a matter that the nature of his investigation was stupid and useless. It's not a matter like, oh, you're under the thumb and control of the cops. It's that the way you tested this was incompetent. You should have been asking questions beforehand. So it's nice that Hank Brennan didn't direct him. Okay. How's that help as far as whether or not his findings are remotely useful? That Mr. Brennan here needs to try and rehabilitate work that has looked over the first couple of hours as we've been looking at this thing sloppier and sloppier as far as its usefulness in reaching any sort of conclusions that can lead us to a finding beyond reasonable doubt. So, yeah, I'm expecting to say, Hank told me to put the phone in the freezer. That was hilarious. If you missed yesterday afternoon, Hank Brennan was going nuts that an expert was referring to Alan Jackson as Alan. Oh, he's Alan now. Oh, are you friends? You go drinking together. Oh, you're good buddies. Why do you call him Alan? Would you call me? What would you call me? And then now his expert is like implying that they're too chummy for them to be able to come in and be dissociated with each other. And then this guy calls him Hank this morning. That's hilarious. This expert. Now, the jury didn't see that exchange yesterday to know how funny.
Do you still have your report with you, Mr. Whiffen?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Let's start with questions that counsel asked you about the battery. When you were trying to determine how the battery worked, you shared with the jury that you did certain testing.
Correct.
What was the purpose of that testing?
To make sure that the battery temperature sensor would be affected by environmental temperatures, such as being in the freezer, such as being outside, being brought back indoors, and to make sure that the fall and rise of the temperature sensor, at least the pattern would match the expected pattern and would match the thermometer that was alongside it.
When you put the batteries or the phone in the freezers, did it matter what the temperature of the freezer was when you put it in it?
I didn't believe it did.
What was the purpose again of putting it in the freezer?
Just to remove the device from a warm environment, which was outside of the freezer, placing it inside the cold environment of the freezer and just seeing how the temperature dropped.
So now we
As
see
you
batteries
mentioned,
get
you
cold.
look at data through science, correct?
Correct.
And so did anybody ever share with you
Should win a Nobel Prize in
important
physics,
points
this guy, for that one.
of the decrease in temperature of the cell phone battery to try to influence your results?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, could you
Did
rephrase?
anybody try to tell you important points of the evening on January 29th, 2022?
Why didn't they?
In an attempt to influence your studies
Not to
on the fact
influence.
that a battery or a phone, when it gets colder, the battery temperature decreases.
No.
So when you developed the graph of the battery temperature and you followed the progress of that temperature declining through the night, was there any other scope or focus of yours other than to simply track the data?
And prove
Just
that batteries
tracking data.
get cold.
Similarly, when you looked at healthcare data, were you asked to try to see if the healthcare data could fit a certain theory or argument?
No, I was not.
You were looking at the healthcare data. Were you looking at it independently?
I was.
Now, it's not your opinion, or you're not taking a position what the meaning of that data matching up is, are you?
No,
No one's asked you to give an opinion about the coordination of data, have they?
no.
So if the data just coordinates on its own, that has nothing to do with your opinion.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain it as.
You mentioned when you put a cell phone in a colder environment like a freezer, you noted that the temperature goes down.
Correct.
Do your studies also show that when the cell phone is taken out of a certain temperature,
You also
and put
discovered
in
that
an
ice is
increased
colder than
temperature,
water.
the cell phone battery temperature goes up?
It does.
Do you have available for the screen the battery graph that we had on your PowerPoint?
I do. 2 seconds.
This guy Whiffin is going to prove that light makes
If you
things
could go
easier
back
to
one
see.
to where it's just the chart, please. And if you could enlarge it, we'll start near the top.
2 seconds.
Okay. At 12:20:43 on January 28, 2023, the battery temperature is 77 degrees.
I'm sorry, that's 8:43 p.m.
That's
all right?
8:43 p.m.
Yes, the first record.
77 degrees.
Yes.
And if we look down to the last box on January 28, 2023,
Yes.
so at 23:28, that's 12:23:28.
Objection, Your Honor. Move your approach, please.
Okay.
All right. We finally get a chart up there, and all of a sudden it gets taken away from us. We get a chart, and it gets taken away from us. So it's very nice that Hank Brennan is helping to establish the independence of this guy. Maybe he's trying to establish that, look, we didn't guide this stupidity. I don't know what the point is. That doesn't prove that he's competent. He literally conducted and proudly presented his homework project proving that batteries can get cold in a freezer. I mean, I guess we got an F in his 7th grade science fair. But yeah, this is the great expert. It's a good thing we got an expert in on this one. Good thing we got an expert. Maybe he's trying to say, hey, look, you're independent of us. Your stupidity is not on me.
I'm going to ask them. Mr. Whiffen, I'm going to ask you to start at 12:13 on January 29th, 2022. Battery temperature 82 degrees.
Yes.
And now you are also tracking healthcare data, weren't you?
Correct.
You are also tracking location information.
Correct.
At 12:22, the battery temperature is 77 degrees Fahrenheit.
Correct.
And during that time, 12:22, that is the time with the location data where we see Mr. O'Keefe's car traveling near Cedarbrook, isn't it?
Objection, Your Honor.
The form sustained.
And at 12:22 on January 29, 2022, where does the location data show Mr. O'Keefe's phone in progress?
It's around Oakdale Road, I believe.
And the travel that you're noting, is that consistent given the speed of being within a car?
I believe so.
And do you know whether or not that car had heat on?
I've got no idea.
You have healthcare data that the phone moves for a 20-second period, right?
I believe so,
And
yes.
That is after the Waze information stops.
Correct.
So you have to watch the form. I know it's hard to orient. You have to watch
I know it's hard to be a lawyer. Why is it hard to
In your
orient?
PowerPoint
I'm so
presentation, you
sympathetic
are
to being a
tracking
lawyer.
the Waze information.
Knows how to
aren't
ask
you?
questions is hard.
I am, yes.
And at some point that switches to more local location data?
Again, Waze is not recording the location data. Waze is requesting location data from Apple's location services, and location services is doing the recording of the location data.
So if we're following the phone through Waze at 12:24:25, is it in a car moving at 16.6 miles per hour?
According to the data, yes.
And at 12:24:26, according to the data, is it still in a car moving at 17 miles per hour?
Stained his two forms.
Can you pull up your PowerPoint and we'll start at 12:24:25. We can show the jury the progress of that phone.
Okay.
And at 12:24:25, how fast is Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone moving?
The data on the device says that it was moving at around 16.6 miles per hour.
Next page, 24:26.
17 miles per hour.
Next page, 24:27.
15.9 miles per hour.
Next page, 24:28.
14.5 miles per hour.
24:29.
12.1 miles per hour.
24:30.
11.5 miles per hour.
24:31.
10.4 miles per hour.
24:32.
8.9 miles per hour.
24:33.
7 miles per hour.
24:34.
5.2 miles per hour.
24:35.
3.5 miles per hour.
24:36.
3.2 miles per hour.
24:37.
1.4 miles per hour.
And 24:38.
0 miles per hour or 0 meters per second.
And at 24:38, that phone is stopped near the flagpole.
I would say so, yes.
Then the location data gets more broad.
It does.
There is no movement at that time after the car stops. Is there any movement when the car stops at 24:38, between 24:38 and 24:30? Is there any movement indicated on the healthcare data?
Not from the health data, no.
At 12:31:57, does the phone demonstrate any movement?
If I may just look back at my
Of
report,
course,
just to
please.
recall. What time was that, sorry?
12:31:57.
Yes, around 12:31, 56 or 57 is the start of the health event, 36 steps.
How long? How many seconds does that phone move for?
20 seconds.
12:31:56 to 12:32:16.
Correct.
And is that the only time that the phone moves from the point it stops at the flagpole until the next morning?
Correct.
The only time.
Correct.
12:31:56 to 12:32:16.
Yes.
And when that phone moves, you can't tell if it's walking a straight line or in a circle.
Correct.
You don't know if the phone is pacing back and forth.
Sustained as to form.
Can you tell how far a phone moves from its origin, from its original point when you're counting steps?
No, iOS creates the calculation, number of steps times the person's gait, and provides the 25.4 meters
You
volume.
have to be walking pretty quickly
At 12,
to go
30
70 feet in
to
20
16.
seconds. 75 feet.
when that phone stops
Wait,
moving,
is that
John
quickly?
O'Keefe's phone stops moving. Do you know the
No,
next
that's not
time it moves
quickly,
again?
actually. That's just walking.
I'm going to allow it.
It's approximately 6:15.
Now, less than 5 minutes later, 12:37, that battery in that cell phone gets another temperature reading, doesn't it?
It does.
Does it go up?
It goes down.
And it goes down to what degrees?
72 degrees.
And over the next 8 minutes, does that temperature even or go up?
Sorry.
At 43 minutes past,
Temperature.
there was another reading of 66 Fahrenheit.
And then at 12:53, that's about what, 20?
I think he has just
1 minutes or
iPhone.
so after that phone stops moving. What's the temperature?
Lemon Zinger.
I'm sorry, at 12:53.
Yes.
Oh, 61 Fahrenheit.
61 degrees.
Yes.
And over the next 14 minutes, does it drop again?
It does. It drops to 55 degrees at 1:07.
And at 1:36 a.m. that morning,
It's down to 50 degrees.
and this health data shows that that phone hasn't moved. Does
Correct.
this healthcare data show that this phone hasn't moved since
There's
12?
That's not true.
16.
no more steps were recorded.
No more steps were recorded, but the location's changing all over the place.
Now, you had studies where you put the phone in a freezer.
Correct.
When you put the phone in the freezer, did you wrap it in anything?
I didn't know.
Did you use any type of heat source that would slow down the process of the temperature dropping?
No.
Let me ask you a hypothetical. If a person, a human,
Objection.
was lying prone
Objection.
on a cell phone
Objection.
outside
Call speculation.
and had a body temperature directly touching the phone, in your opinion, could that slow the process
Now, he's an expert, so he can give an
of
opinion.
the temperature decreasing as compared to just simply
She'll
putting a
allow it if he
phone
objects.
in a freezer?
Sustained.
Oh, there you go.
When you put the phone in the
It's
freezer,
not just leading. She would have
wrap it
said
in any
object
warmth?
staying as the
No.
form.
any clothing?
Nothing at all.
It was naked. A naked phone.
Now, you don't know the temperature, but you said there was a blizzard outside?
That's my understanding, yes.
How do you
At
not?
6:06 a.m. Is there a change in the battery temperature of John O'Keefe's phone?
Yes, the temperature has dropped to 43 degrees Fahrenheit.
So there's a 7-degree drop in temperature at 6:06.
Correct.
Were you shared any of the facts or information that has nothing to do with data and science? Were you shared any facts or information about what may have occurred to that cell phone and its exposure to colder air that morning, minutes prior to 6:06 a.m.?
I may have heard that around that time is when John was found.
Oh, so could you answer the question, yes or no, that Mr. Gannon asked you? Did anybody share information with you about that, sir?
Nobody shared it with me, no.
If the phone was in an environment and it was exposed to further colder air or drop in temperature, could it register a reading?
I'm sorry, you just ask that again?
Sure. Let me ask a different question.
Which makes
The
sense.
phone drops to 43 degrees, John's phone at 6:06. 6:14, is there another change with this phone dropping in temperature?
Yes, it drops to 37 Fahrenheit.
Do you know what, if anything, happened as far as the environment that phone was exposed to seconds before 6:14?
I don't know.
Do you know if that phone at 6:15?
The point that Hank is trying to get at here for the jury to start considering is it was pressed against the warmer body of O'Keefe through the night, and then when it was exposed completely to elements, it started losing heat yet again.
was then placed in a warmer environment, like a pocket or a car? Do you
I
know?
have no idea.
But your data shows at 6:35, there's an increase in temperature,
Correct.
doesn't it?
It does.
So at 6:14, you don't know if there's been any increased exposure, do you?
No, I know that according to the battery temperature, it's increased, but I don't know the reason for that.
Now, if you look at the battery temperature at 6:06 a.m., it's 43 degrees.
Yes.
That's a change in temperature, isn't it? Is that a change in temperature from 136?
It is.
Looking at your healthcare data, is there something happening relative to the phone at 6:04 to 6:11?
There is, 432 steps were recorded at that time.
Can a phone record steps if it's being moved back and forth?
It may record some. It's difficult to say how many would be misunderstood as being steps taken.
If you're shaking an object that moves the phone violently, could it record steps?
Again, potentially it could record some, but it's not a consistent enough pattern of movement for it to be recorded as lots of steps.
Now at 6:14, the temperature is 37 degrees, and you just offered us that by 6:35, over the next 21 minutes, the degrees goes up by 6 degrees.
Correct.
You don't know what was happening with that phone at 6:15:01, do you?
I don't.
Do you know?
I don't know. No.
Next question.
But what you do know is this healthcare data at 6:15:14,
Correct.
and that demonstrates what?
At 6:15:14, it was the start of 180 steps.
So the phone at 6:15:14 is again moving.
Correct.
And after that starts moving wherever the phone may go, it starts getting warmer temperature.
Correct.
Now, you
Somebody,
shared with us location data, and you explained the difference between Waze and other types of location data. I had asked you an opinion about where the phone was located based just on location data, nothing else. And when I asked you that opinion, I didn't ask you to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, did I?
I don't recall.
I asked you if it was consistent
Yes.
with being near the flagpole the entire night.
Sustained.
Based on location data alone, are you offering an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty where that phone was?
It's difficult to say with a reasonable degree of certainty based on the randomness of the location data.
Oh
I'm
no!
going to ask you to keep your voice up, Mr. Whiffen. Could we turn the AC off, please?
Oh my God! Can you give better answers to Hank?
No, it's difficult to give an answer based to a high degree of scientific certainty based on the sporadic nature of the records that night.
Uh-oh.
Based on the data you have, just on location data alone, is that location data consistent with that phone being in
Asked
the
that
Flagpole
yesterday. That was your
area
point.
from midnight until 6:15 the next morning.
It
Just
is,
said-
yes.
There's also information because the broadness that it could have been somewhere else.
Correct.
Yet it is consistent.
It is.
You didn't just rely on location data for your opinion, though.
I didn't know.
Watch the form, Mr. Brennan.
Yes.
Sustained.
Did you rely just on location data for your opinion?
No, I didn't know.
That's
Did
still leading.
you also consider the health data?
I did.
And
Oh,
did you also consider
leading.
battery temperature?
Leading.
Sustained.
Let
In
me ask a
addition to
question.
Location data, what are the other things you considered, in your opinion, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that that phone was at the flagpole the entire night from 12:30 until 6 the next morning?
I'm going
Allow
along
it.
with that.
It was based on the location data that recorded high accuracy, based on the health data that showed when the device moved and how far, based on the battery temperature information, and based on the Doppler face detection information.
Let me ask you some more questions about the health data. You were shown pieces of information on examination. You told us that health data, well, the phone was it your opinion the phone was in the car until it stopped at the flagpole?
Sustained.
At 12:31:56 and 12:32:16, does the data show that is the time that the phone was moving?
At what time, sorry?
12:31:56, 12:32:16.
I'm sorry, the rest of the question was?
Does that demonstrate movement of the phone at that time?
Yes, it did.
You shared that you can't tell the direction or the distance of steps. If,
I'm sorry.
no, please. If that phone moved from the flagpole in a straight line away from the flagpole, like for example, towards the house, wouldn't it have to move again before 6:04 to get back to the flagpole?
Objection, Your Honor.
No speculation.
I'll allow it.
I would presume so.
All right, you asking me to strike that, Mr.
Yes, Your
Leslie?
Honor.
I'm going to strike that.
Does health data register when a phone moves?
It does.
And that's a fair point he's making.
I'll ask you some more detailed questions.
Again, because I'm trying to just figure out like what's happening, what this phone is recording here. You sort of have to ask yourself, if you're of the opinion that he went into that house and the 70 steps, 70 feet he traveled from the flagpole was to the house. So you would think that there would be some sort of recording of data when it's getting back from the house into the outside where it was found on John O'Keefe's person. And it doesn't seem as if that was there anywhere. Whatever you want to say about the battery temperature, whatever you want to say about the Doppler or all that other stuff. If you're telling me that the 70 feet it got there was to get it from the flagpole to the house, and that even you want to say that it was hidden in its geolocation from the house, you have to also be saying now once it comes back outside later and the phone makes its way back over to his person, how does it not recording those steps? And maybe there was a glitch and it just didn't record it. It's possible. But that is a reason. Now you're pushing towards, the more you're looking for to support your theory, in order for your alternate theory to be upheld, the more you're creating less of an issue there being reasonable doubt. The more unreasonable your doubt is.
About your research into a phone that's been attributed to Jennifer McCabe.
There's evidence was found on John because
You
the
looked at
women
one
find it
piece
on
of
John,
the
pick it
report
up from his
on the
body.
screen, and that was a phone call register.
Yes.
Could you turn to that phone call register, please?
What are we doing with the slide that's up there, Mr. Brennan?
I would like to change it to the phone call register if possible.
Oh, it's not me.
I believe it's Exhibit 42. If you, it's a. Do you have the report that you could put on the screen regarding
Oh, I
the
don't
phone call
have.
register?
I don't have this one that was shared as
Okay.
Exhibit 42.
This is now marked as Exhibit 42. In the phone call register, you noted that there was a call at 12:14:36.
Yes.
Have you found it? Is that you?
This is not me. No.
Oh,
I think it's Ms. Gilman.
thank you, Ms. Gilman. Could you enlarge that, please?
Which portion of it?
Up the top part. The first 4 or 5 calls. Thank you.
And we need it larger, Ms.
I think it
Gilman,
means a
please.
reasonable person would have a reasonable doubt. That's how I understand it.
All right, that's
Thank you.
better. Thank you.
On examination, you read that at 12:14:36, there was a phone call incoming
Yes.
that appeared to be from Jennifer McCabe.
Correct.
At 12:14:36, the location information is the John O'Keefe's cell phone at Fairview by that point?
So the question, is it?
Yes, is it?
No.
And then at 12:18:47, there's another call, and again from Jen McCabe.
That's an outgoing call to Jen McCabe.
It's an outgoing call to Jennifer McCabe.
Yes.
12:18:47, the location information, does that place Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone at Fairview?
No, it does not.
Then at 12:29:44, there's an 8-second call that you said you believe is answered. Do you know if there was any conversation in that call?
No way to know if there's any conversation.
And at 12:29:44, does the location information place John O'Keefe's cell phone somewhere
It does at Fairview Road.
at the flagpole?
Yes.
I'll strike that.
Now, there is not a call. Well, let me ask you, the next call, what time is the next call?
33 minutes and 35 seconds after midnight.
And who's that call?
Now look at this. Look, you can't deny the fact that there's frantic calling at 12:33:35. It seems to ring for 30 seconds, and then she calls back, and then it rings for 30 seconds, and then she calls back, and then it rings for 30 seconds, and then she calls back, and then it rings for 30 seconds, and she calls back. And I mean, she's desperately trying to get him on the phone, which you cannot deny is consistent with the notion that she thinks she just ran him over, right? And she's making sure he's okay.
From Karen Reed.
Is that before or
Now,
after?
given what we saw from the earlier phone calls, it seems as if he was rejecting her calls, but he normally would reject her calls by hitting rejection. That's what he did, I believe, earlier in the day from what we saw from Nicholas Guarino's testimony about what she did all day on what he was doing with her on January 28th earlier. 15 hours earlier when he was
After
screening
John O'Keefe's
her out.
health data stops?
After.
At 12:37, you offered us that the cell phone battery's temperature is decreasing.
Yes.
How many calls have been made from the defendant to John O'Keefe by the time that cell phone battery starts dropping in temperature?
7.
I want to turn now to some questions about your analysis of Ms. McCabe's phone. You were asked about hash values, a way of trying to confirm the integrity of the data on a extraction.
Yes.
When forensic analysts look at phones, do you sometimes get to actually see the phone?
Yes.
Do you sometimes have to use an extraction, a copy of the phone?
Yes.
Is it important to try to look and research or search the item to determine whether or not there's been any tampering?
Yes.
You were asked if hash values is one way to do that.
I was.
And you were shown or read part of your report about hash values.
Yes.
There's a second part to that, isn't there?
There is.
You didn't get a chance to share the second part, did you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
In this case, there was a hash value, wasn't there?
There was.
Now, just so we can understand simply, how is a hash value created during the extraction process? What does that mean in very, very simple terms?
Yep. At the end of the extraction, an algorithm is run on every piece of, every byte of data within the extraction, and it comes out with a value at the end. The idea is that if any of that data ever changes, be it through user interaction or through corruption of data in how it was stored, then that value will change at the end.
You mentioned Gray Key. Is that a software, hardware that makes the copy of the phone?
It's a piece of hardware and includes software.
How commonly is Gray Key used in the industry?
It's very common.
Did I hear you say that with Gray Key,
I actually forgot, but it's also another good point that she does text him saying, I'm leaving. So to this point that she was in the house, maybe she was outside. He was expecting her to come out. And the reason she's calling frantically is because he's not coming back outside. So the notion of her saying, I'm leaving, is consistent with that she's sitting in the driveway or sitting on the street outside the house. And she's calling to say, why the hell aren't you coming back out the way we discussed?
hash
So
value
that helps.
is never
That helps
authenticated?
defense.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained is to fall.
Does Gray Key authenticate the hash value?
The hash value is placed inside a PDF, which is not signed.
And is that common or typical in the industry?
That is the way that Gray Key do it.
Was there anything anomaly or untoward or different about the way this one was done?
No.
Did the hash value from the Gray Key extraction match the hash value?
It did.
Anything irregular whatsoever about it?
No, not that I can see.
Now, you don't just read software programs when they spit out reports, do you?
No.
As an analyst, as one of the leaders of Celebrite, do you have a history of being a researcher?
Yes, I did.
A history of study?
Yes.
Have you written reports and papers for people to learn?
I've written multiple blogs, done multiple presentations, webinars. Some of my blog posts have become peer-reviewed articles.
Okay. Is it sufficient to simply look at a report that is generated by Celebrite or Axiom or any other service and make conclusions just on the report?
I don't believe it is, no.
Why do you think that's imprudent?
Sorry?
Why do you think that is not prudent to simply rely on a report?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow him to answer.
The tools are very good at surfacing data, but I believe it's up to the examiner to understand what that data means and to provide context to the information which the tool itself can't give.
And when you were considering the hash value and determine whether or not you thought there was anything wrong with the data, aside from the hash value, how do you do that?
How do I do
How
what?
do you make a determination whether or not this has integrity, the data hasn't been tampered with, so to speak?
Okay. So notwithstanding the hash value, I'd be looking for issues with the data that don't make sense. In this particular case, there was lots of data points that all appeared to work together. Like you would see one artifact change in one database and an artifact would change somewhere else. And it all just made perfect sense in how it was functioning. That kind of leads you to believe that it's not been tampered with, or the person tampering with it did an exceptional job to be able to cover all of these different tracks and make it undetectable.
Did you try to summarize that perspective in the part of the report that wasn't read to you on examination?
I did.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty if there was any data integrity issues in the information you reviewed?
I don't believe there was any.
It was characterized on examination, there was a dispute about the time origin of the search, how long to die encode. Do you remember being asked the question about a dispute?
Yes.
Have you, in your studies and in your position, is there any viable dispute in the forensic data scientific community about that issue?
I don't believe there is anymore.
Now, you got involved in this case because you received a complaint from a consumer.
I received a question from a consumer, yes.
And you attempted to resolve that?
Correct.
Sustained.
Other than that source, have you received any information, feedback, opinions that would make this issue in any way a dispute?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow it.
I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Other than that one person, that one consumer, have you received any information in the forensic community which you're part of?
Oh.
Any data, any information that would suggest that your conclusions are in dispute?
Yeah, I received a very similar question from an examiner in Europe. Fairly similar circumstances with a case and with a timestamp that didn't make sense, that was originating from the same database. I applied the same logic and theory to his question, and he confirmed it solved the issue for him. It all made sense then.
And since then, has in your world, academic and research world, forensic data science, other than the person who originally raised the question, has there been any dispute brought to you by anybody about your conclusions about when the search actually happened?
No. If anything, I've heard people who have confirmed the research that I did.
Do you know Jessica Hyde?
I do.
Is she well known in the forensic community?
She is.
You were asked questions about your law enforcement background and the fact that Celebrite is used as a forensic tool, oftentimes by law enforcement.
Yes.
Did you go into your company's software and change it to accommodate law enforcement?
No, definitely not.
Would you ever do such a thing?
No.
Why wouldn't you do something like that?
Aside from being unethical to change the data in that way, this is an artifact that is easily validated by any examiner. And if I was to tamper it for the purposes of changing the outcome of a case, it would be detected by all of our customers immediately and would destroy the reputation of Cellbrite, which I've got no intention of doing.
Before a prior proceeding, the printout from the software, when it was showing the timestamp of the Safari search, was it labeled something in particular before?
The Cellbrite search
Yes.
was labeled last visited time.
Last what?
Last visited time.
And when it was labeled last visited time, did it show 227 on the report?
It did.
Cellbrite, after research and consideration, removed that label?
We removed the timestamp when we determined that it was not relevant to the last time that that page was visited.
Why was it important to remove that timestamp from the program and the software?
It was clearly causing confusion.
Does the company have concerns when consumers are confused about information?
Of course, yes.
Do companies have concerns if a consumer tries to manipulate the use of that information?
Of course.
Are companies concerned that a label could be misleading for somebody who may not have a higher level of experience?
Yes.
When that decision was made to change that for clarification, do you make that solely by yourself?
No, I did not.
Who do you consult with and who's part of that decision process?
So again, after my research, I passed the results of my research to the Forensic Research Group. This is a team based at Cellrite whose sole job is to do the research, do the coding to make sure that what we're giving to customers is correct. They spent some time validating the research that I did, verifying that my research was correct, and then they were responsible for making the change based on the updated research.
It was suggested that a separate software program, not the company you work for, Cellrite, but Axiom reflects this search as deleted. That's not entirely accurate, is it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained as to form.
Running an Axiom program, would it reflect this search as deleted?
Yes, and it is a deleted search.
Does it have a label on it?
It does.
Is that carved?
Yes, it would be.
Now, are you familiar with the Axiom Artifact Reference Guide when it talks about the dangers of relying on the timestamp?
I'm not familiar with it referencing dangers, but I'm aware of the document.
Are you aware of the reference guide when it talks about Safari suspended state tabs
Yes.
and offers that since these are local tab states, results from this artifact may contain an earlier date and time compared to the results in the Safari history artifact if iCloud Safari synchronization?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Are you aware of the reference guide?
I am.
Are you aware that it cautions that a timestamp can be misinterpreted?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Sir, when you came to your opinion that the search for how long to die in the cold at 6:23 and 6:24 in the morning of January 29, 2022, was the time that they were actually inputted, not 2:27. In forming your opinion, did you consider both Celebrite and Axiom software?
I did.
Did you consider other tools as well?
Yes, my own.
And tell us a little bit about your own tool.
Again, this is a tool I've been writing for approximately 5 or 6 years now. Partially for fun, partially for research purposes. And it's a tool I make available to other examiners globally.
And sir, when you were trying to examine these searches that in your opinion were 6:23 and 6:24 a.m., did you ever try to test it yourself and actually take a phone so you could either prove or disprove to yourself that that earlier timestamp didn't mean it was the time that it was searched?
Oh, definitely. Yes, that's the kind of thing I do all the time when verifying artifacts.
And in your opinion, is that helpful in understanding how a timestamp earlier could relate to a later search?
Exactly, very helpful.
Would you be willing to do a live demonstration for us on the screen and show us how that works?
Yes.
How long would that take?
Probably about 5 minutes.
Okay. Could you show us?
Of course.
Okay.
All right. Should be coming up to the lunch break soon, you would think. You would think. But let's see if I can maybe catch up a little bit here. Getting closer.
Seems like a good place to take our lunch and recess.
Indeed.
45 minutes.
45 minutes.
The rest of it is recess.
Please rise to the jury.
I'm going to be starting up at 2 o'clock. I'll say right now. I'm going to be starting back up at 2 o'clock. When she says 45 minutes, then they bring the jury in and everything like that. I will be starting back up at 2 o'clock. I expect that I'll make sure I'm caught up, and at some point, I'm probably going to switch over We'll see. We'll see what's going to happen then. But I thank you all for joining me. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe. I do this for the subscriptions. That's why I'm here. Literally spending the last 4 hours here just to start getting my growth back. So if you can please join me, hit like, subscribe, I would be most appreciative. It is essential. It's my motivation to keep going for the next 5 weeks. So if you can do that, I would be most obliged. Thank you very much, and I will see you, God willing, at 2 o'clock, and we will get into the rest of this redirect and cross and more stuff to come at 2. Till then, Godspeed. See ya. Oh, you'll find the links at goodlogic.locals.com. That's goodlogic.locals.com.